If you move across, then there's a mic there. Oh, a portable mic, even better.
Thank you, Chair. That's better. It's better than me trying to scale tables to get in the middle of the room. Yeah, we've produced a covering report, I think, which largely sets out the background to this issue and some of the actions that have been undertaken by the agencies. I mean, our role essentially as the council, we've used our convening powers to bring the various agencies together to tackle what is this really important local issue. We do have some powers ourselves as a council, but our statutory responsibilities largely relate to matters such as appropriate signage, but also things like the public space protection orders we've done in terms of dog fouling on the beaches, and also our role in terms of highway authority in terms of surface water runoff and things of that nature. We do have a presentation, Chair, to run through to set that scene. So if it's helpful, we could just move straight onto that. Stuart can lead through that, and then I think we then lead on to Professor Gock and others to lead through their presentations going forward.
Thank you. It would be helpful, except it's not the way my agenda's structured. So by way of scene setting, that's really helpful. Thank you. And we'll go into the detail of North Yorkshire and welcome Stuart in a minute. What we thought we would do is ask some local organisations and businesses what the impact of the poor water quality, particularly in the South Bay, has had. Can I just let you know, we had originally invited South Bay traders, and no pun intended, but they are no longer trading. So we have two businesses who were in South Bay traders to speak to us, but as you've heard, Rudy Barman is unable to attend today. So we've got two mics there. Can I invite first Steve from Surface Against Sewage, Steve, and then I'll ask Ros and Andrew together if that's okay. Wiggle, I think, is your answer.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Good morning. Thank you very much for giving your time. I know it's a subject really close to heart. Yeah. We've allocated about 5 minutes for each of our speakers, and I hope that's sufficient. I'm quite lenient early in the day, and then I panic a bit as the day goes on. So I will let you do what you need to do.
Of course, Simon.
Thank you.
Well, my name's Stephen Crawford. I represent Surface Against for Scarborough for quite a number of years. I've lived in Scarborough all my life. I've been to sea all my life here, and I love the place. I also ran a surf shop on South Bay until 3 years ago, and I closed specifically because of water quality. So I felt I couldn't take paying customers in the water past signs where I felt they were going to be under threat from actually pollution and actually getting potentially quite ill. So I could spend a lot of time giving you facts and figures and things about North Bay. A recent surf magazine was classed as the worst surfing beach in England, and there were 296 spills in a 2024 season, which was ludicrously high. South Bay is still poor after investment. Obviously, McCain's have spent £25 million doing what they clean up there. 60 years of pollution being going in South Bay. Yorkshire Water spent some money as well. The trouble is, we live in a culture of absolute failure, where you're basically awarded for just doing stuff that should never happened in the first place, which is a problem. We've given billions to water companies. To give a scale of the problem as well, Scarborough has now been recognised as a source of pollution for North Bay, because we had problems a while back where we're getting really high readings without any sort of real indicator of normal pipes. But Scarborough CSOs, there's 5 up there. So this is a figure for you. Spain season 24. The pipe ran for 54 days. There's 1,300 hours of spills into a very small watercourse, which obviously feeds directly into the north of North Bay. So this has been a huge, huge problem for a lot of years. Sinjin, would you mind putting a slide up, please? Right, now this, in 2023, was what tourists saw when they came to the beach. So you would arrive in Scarborough, there were no bathing flags up at all whatsoever, and as a town, our interface, our speaking to tourists who've travelled and paid a lot of money to come to our town, we're given a very small, badly printed sign which basically said, don't go in the water. So really, this was the whole way. And people consider the impact of water pollution on us as a town and individuals. I mean, the thing is, as a surfer, I've known about water pollution for a lot of years. What's happened recently is the general public have a lot more knowledge about how bad things are. I mean, I presume somebody's seen a series called Dirty Business, which has been on recently, and that shows how serious water quality really is. It's not just like an abstract concept. It's a real thing that affects real people's lives. I mean, I was speaking to some people outside. They live in Scarborough, they've got children, and they're scared their kids going in the water. So this beautiful thing which all of us live, trade, and enjoy has been classed now as something which is a thing of fear for people rather than actually something we should respect and enjoy. As a surfer, it's absolutely horrendous. So this was 2024. Can you mind the next slide, please, Finjan? This was the improvement. So what you've got is you've got a family coming on here. They spent money to come to Scarborough. They want to enjoy coming on the beach. They've basically put the bags down. They've got changed. They walk down the water's edge. They're doing what they should do. They're going to where the lifeguard flags are. So you've basically got the red and yellow bathing flags on the beach. On that sign, you can't put across because it's quite small, is a sign advising you not to go in the water. It was a Monty Python sketch. This is basically, this is farce. This is an absolute farce. How can you have a bathing flag with lifeguards and a sign on the sign saying don't go in the water? I mean, I'm not sure who came up with the idea, and I'm sure it's just to tick some boxes. But really, for me as an individual, I just looked at that and I thought, there's no point even talking about this, because if that's the level of, I'm still lost of words 2 years later, I've lost the words about it, I don't know what to actually sort of say. So really now the big problem is if you now do an AI search for Scarborough, it brings up bad water quality. It says seaside town, all the rest of this, it brings up bad water quality. So that is now that's never going to change. It'll always pop up there. So the neglect of the past how many years on infrastructure and the will to change it and actually be honest about what's going on. Because strictly one of the big problems, I've been speaking about this for a lot of years, and a lot of it's for if not deaf ears that basically turn a different way a little bit. And a lot of these problems could have been mitigated by a bit of thought in the past, but that's just the way it goes. The thing is now, we do have Scarborough 400 coming up. And we should be celebrating that Scarborough was the first seaside resource, about the beauty of the resource we have on our doorstep. But the trouble now is it was the first resource. From what people are thinking now, it's the last resource. Because who wants to come to... The best way to describe... People have trouble understanding about water pollution. And if you look at it as an entity, it's like a one-star restaurant with Google reviews. So when people actually go and look and review Scarborough now, what they're seeing is something that's basically failed by the EA. And if it was a restaurant, you wouldn't touch the barge pole, you wouldn't eat there, you wouldn't go anywhere near it. So what we do have is a very, very polluted sea, which is still being perceived as a problem. So this is the real sort of problem. I mean, Yorkshire Water will say they're going to invest a lot of money, which I absolutely think is fantastic. The problem I have got with it is that I'm not sure if many people remember about 10 years ago, we gave Yorkshire Water £110 million. This extra money on bills to improve water quality. We were offered and promised the best bathing water in Europe. It failed miserably. I have asked at every level of company, I've even asked the chief executive about this. I've asked every single level through, why have you failed? And it's a simple answer. If you have someone do some work for you, after a year it failed. If your roof leaked after a year, if you pay the roofer £10,000 to fix it, you would say, why has it failed? Why hasn't it worked? And I just do believe that Yorkshire Water needs to clear that up before we move on, because it's about clarity, it's about perception, it's about trust. So if I want to feel trust for the work they're going to offer now, I want to know why it failed in the past, because you don't throw good money after bad. I'm a Yorkshireman. I wouldn't do that, ever. I want to know why this work failed. I'd like to know why it goes there, because basically, because of this, we just need... I've been criticised speaking out, and if anything I've done has harmed the town, it was never my intention. I'm just a person who's basically lost his job because of this. I've got no support from the council, no support from Yorkshire Water, or any of the people who actually respond for this problem. I've basically lost my shop, I've lost my business, I've lost my livelihood, for the simple reason that there's a problem not beyond my control. So really, we'd like some clarity, and you don't spend millions unless you don't have to. So let me prove this. So I just want to feel that I can lead this meeting and tell the people outside that they are going to get something going to get done, and we're going to start getting clarity on this. Okay. I think.
Thank you. That was very helpful and very powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've noted a couple of questions that I think are really relevant, and either my colleagues or myself will pick them up when Yorkshire Water and the EA come along. Could I ask you just to shuffle up one seat, Mr. Crawford, and then can I invite Mr. Clare and Mr. Soulcroft to come, and we'll hear from them as well, and then we'll allow time for councillors to ask you 3 questions, if that's all right. Okay, Rod, would you like to go first? Or?
Yeah, okay. So I've come as a trader on the South Bay. Just really my comments from observations and thoughts. I personally do swim on a regular basis in the sea, and I have been fine. I also have been around since the early 60s when the water wasn't great, and did swim then, and it's improved, but I think it's not good enough. I do see families coming to the beach all summer long. They just go straight in the sea. I don't know that they're aware of the concerns that we would have. And I think sometimes the publicity is unhelpful. It could be more constructive. We don't want to put people off coming to Scarborough, but if their main feature is to swim in the water, then obviously we have to let them know of the hazards and that type of thing. And I do swim all year round, and I see people and swimming groups swimming all year round, and that's their choice to do that in both bays. I think my questions would be, is where in both bays are the waters actually tested? Is there enough testing from Scarborough Mills, from the Beck outlet to the Bulge? Is again it tested again in Peasham Gap? Again, in the South Bays, not just in the harbour mouth, but along the bays. I tend to swim in the South Bay and Spa area, which I feel is slightly better than possibly close to the harbour. But that's my choice. But I do see swimming groups in the sea all year round, and families just want to come and go in the sea. So as a destination, we owe it to them to make sure it's the best it possibly can be. I also want to know a question from Yorkshire Water. Why is the water not tested during the winter months to give us a full, complete and accurate picture or a comparison as to, is it affected by higher volumes of people in the UK or coming to the town, or is it something that's seasonal because of weather or other outside factors like the farming, pollution or anything else coming into the sea? And also, what's happening with the sand? We've moved the sand every year. What's stored in that sand? That's all moved during the winter months. So is there something that's stored in the sand that comes up that then affects the bathing water at a later stage? That would be my question. And is there more pollution due to population increases during the seasonality of the year and the effect on overflows from storm drains?
Thank you. That's really helpful. I have noted some questions. I'm going to ask the council. I'll give you fair warning, guys, about moving the sand, because it's not something that had occurred to me, and I've got a list of questions that I want to ask. So thank you very much for that. The testing regime will pick up with the Environment Agency, but it is driven by bathing water quality regulations. But we can come back to that later on. Thank you. That was really helpful, and again, really powerful. Thank you very much. And finally, Andrew Clay. I was going to give you a title, Andrew, and then I hesitated. Managers, Chief Executive, Sea Life Centre.
I'm the general manager of the Sea Life Centre. As some of you remember, I used to be the chief executive of the museum service.
Okay. Yes.
I've gone from fossilised fish that have been dead for 200 million years to living specimens. I'm still not used to things moving. But I'm Andrew. I run the Sea Life Centre. Just to give you a bit of, well, thank you very much, firstly, for inviting me to talk to you this morning. Just to give you a bit of background, the Sea Life Centre is 35 years old this year. So we're hitting a bit of a milestone. We're owned by Merlin International, which I'm very pleased to say is a British limited company, and we're the second largest entertainment business in the world. We have about 210 sites worldwide. We even have a Sea Life Centre in Hollywood. And when I asked my wife last week if she fancied a transfer, she said, "I'm not living in Trump's America." Sorry, that's the only political point I'm going to make. But anyway, so we're part of Merlin. The reason I want to emphasise Merlin, actually, that means investment. So a couple of years ago, we put a new solar roof on. That was £450,000. And Janet here unveiled the new roof. So that very much signals our commitment to the environment and environmental sustainability. And then we've just opened our new otter enclosure, which has cost £200,000. So over the last 3 or 4 years, Merlin has spent £1 million roughly, take here or there, on Sea Life Scarborough, which is investment in Scarborough, which is an important point to make. We employ largely local people, and we try and use local suppliers when possible. So the money that we earn goes back into the local economy. Can I have the next slide, please? There you go. Those nostalgic ones amongst you probably remember the previous scheme on Monkey Island, I think it was called traditionally. Quite respectable post-war development that sat there before, and I can't remember that, but I think there was a cafe and amusement arcade and so on and so forth, a little paddling pool. That came down in the early 90s, and then as you can see on the right, that's the year that Sea Life opened. And we've grown since then. There was nothing outside. There were no seals or penguins or otters. They came later. I think, Janet, you opened the penguin enclosure actually in 2008. And you can see from the scheme the steam rail, well, not steam rail actually, the railway that's behind us. And then obviously at the time that the Sea Life Centre was built, I don't think it was Yorkshire Water then, but wherever your iteration was in those days, did a huge amount of work behind us. So it was a scheme that included the Sea Life Centre and presumably works on water tanks, I think it is, behind the centre. Can I have the next slide, please? So why is clean water important to Sea Life Centre? This is the $65 million question, isn't it? Can I have the next slide, please? So just to give you some statistics, so we pump in about 1 million litres of water every year into the Sea Life Centre. We use about 20,000 litres of water a day, and our ocean tank, which we're famous for, has just over 150,000 litres of water in it. A useful distinction is the deep in Hull, which is the nearest sort of large aquarium, and at the deep they have to artificially produce their seawater. This isn't uncommon, and it's because you can't pump in from the Humber estuary because obviously it's very silty and it's not suitable for the tanks. But I'm pleased to say that all the water in the Sea Life Centre is pumped in direct from North Bay. So we pump in the water. For the seal enclosure, we do a fairly light filtration. And then for the other tanks, obviously it's a heavier filtration, and we test the water on a daily basis. And as you can imagine, the life support systems for our tanks are incredibly important. Can I have the next slide, please? So the real reason that water is so important is because the sort of bedrock of the Sea Life Centre, yes, we're an attraction. We have about 130,000 visitors come every year. But we are primarily a learning and conservation entity. So learning and conservation lie at the heart of our work. So obviously we have a vested interest in the cleanliness of the water in Scarborough. We use so much of it. But a lot of our activity is about learning about species, learning about habitats locally. We're doing a mussel habitat research project on North Bay at the moment, for example. And conservation is also at the heart of our work. Often that's about breeding. So we last year we experimented with an octopus breeding program. We've just recently had a baby shark that that was born on site, sort of rare species of shark. We do a lot of other things that are about protecting habitats and learning about them. Next slide, please. We're obviously also very interested in local marine habitats, and I suppose we provide a lens into that world. We're very lucky in Scarborough that the Sea Life Centre is coastal. We're literally a few metres from the sea, and that's not always the case. There are Sea Life Centres in city centres. I personally perceive that experience is slightly diminished. We can actually see the real habitat on our doorstep, and that's a huge asset for us, but it's also a huge asset for Scarborough. I was talking at the Graham School Assembly a couple of weeks ago, and it was a great pleasure to be able to talk to youngsters about some of the work we're doing, but also trying to encourage them to go down onto the beach and just explore and look. And as you know, we have more cetaceans in our waters. Sort of statistic we often talk about is that there are more seals around the British Isles than anywhere else in the world. We're the seal capital of the world. So again, clean water, very important. There are more dolphins, more porpoises, and remarkably, bluefin tuna coming back into our waters. So that ecosystem that's on our doorstep is vital, not just from an attraction perspective. We are a private limited company, obviously, and the money that people pay to come in keeps us going. But it's important from an ecological perspective as well. Have the next slide, please. I won't labour the point, but obviously you're all familiar with our seal hospital, which is a fairly unique facility. We invested £20,000 in that the year before last. Funny enough, last year we only rescued 4 seals, which was of quite a low year, but we did take in about 4 turtles. They hadn't come in from Scarborough, they'd come in on the west coast, but they come to Scarborough for a rehabilitation. And this is another thing about the Sea Life Centre, it's the hidden Sea Life Centre, the work we do on animals behind the scenes to return them to health and release them. Next slide, please. We do monthly beach cleans, so you're all very welcome to participate on them if you like. And that's, again, it's an eyes and ears job. We're out every month checking North Bay. Not a lot of litter, but we did find that 150 kilos of rope that got snagged on the rocks last year. And annoyingly, there was a deflated kayak amongst it all as well. Who would go kayaking and then just dump their kayak on the beach? It beggars belief, quite frankly. But obviously, we plastics in the sea are a big issue for us. I have to say, we were appalled at bonfire night on the amount of the activity on North Bay, the pollution being fired into the ocean, people firing rockets over the Sea Life Centre, plastic debris entering into our penguin enclosure. It really was an absolute disgrace. Next slide, please. Oh, we've come to the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I've done a couple of litter picks. Definitely recommend it. It's disgusting what's on the beach. On the subject of bonfire night, and I know that Alison Humes raised the issue because, of course, there were some injuries. And I'd like council just to touch on what we might do slightly differently about bonfire night, because apart from the risk to physical well-being, the pollution in the atmosphere and landing in the sea and the debris is quite concerning. So thank you for that. Right, members, you have the opportunity to ask our residents any questions that you may have that you'd want to follow up, Rich and Eric.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you all for coming. My first question is to Steve. I understand that you were a tenant of the council with your shop. Are you satisfied that your concerns were dealt with appropriately? When you begged the question, how can I, in all good conscience, charge to take surfers out into the bay when before getting into the water they must walk past signs warning against swimming? That's my first question. And second one, did you receive answers from the summit organisers as to why, despite numerous requests, you were excluded as a representative of Surfers Against Sewage?
Can you hear me okay?
That's better.
No, I heard nothing back about any of those questions I asked at all. And also, we never heard back about the query about water runoff from the off the foreshore going. We talk about moving sand, about the drains actually do back up when it's heavy rain, and that runs onto the beach. So whatever's actually in the sand, if that moves around, if that was an issue, there would affect pollution on the bay as well. And that was just a meeting in 2023. And Yorkshire Water never got back with information about that. So I think Janet asked a question, I think, and also Rich did about that.
Thank you. I had a question of my own. No, thank you. I had a question of my own on runoff of water. So I'll add that to the list for the council, and then we can carry anything forward to Yorkshire Water because the council are up after you. Okay, thank you. Eric?
Thank you, Chair. It's really a question basically to all three of the speakers this morning. And I wish to wait until I've heard Yorkshire Water regarding what's going to happen in the future. Mr. Crawford mentioned, I mean, I travel around the Marine Drive basically daily and see surfers there enjoying themselves. So I think we're looking, I hope this morning, for some sort of a level to put Scarborough, as Mr. Crawford mentions, back on the map. I honestly as well believe that we're looking to the future for Yorkshire Water. The investment is there. McCain's have put the investment in. So I think this meeting this morning is we're going to get some good answers. I'm sort of optimistic of that. And it's another question to the General Manager of the Sea Life Centre. And I saw everybody reach for the pens when you presented your speech. The fact that you mentioned, I think it was you use 20,000 litres of water daily for your tanks. And I'm sure there's many tropical fish keepers in this chamber. I've been one myself for many, many years and love that hobby. And I do know that when you filter a tank, the urine in the bottom is filtered out. So I just wondered when you mentioned your presentation that if you're putting 20,000 litres of water, fresh water daily, what happens to the filtered 20,000 litres of urine water? How do you get rid of that? And I'd like to come back later on when Yorkshire Water have finished their presentation, Chair. If I could have an answer from the Sea Life Centre manager. Thank you.
So yeah, it's not going back into North Bay. We don't discharge into the sea, we discharge into the drainage system. So it's not going back into the sea.
So it then goes into Yorkshire Water's treatment work.
I'm assuming so, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Janet?
My questions have already been asked, actually. I was curious as what Councillor Broadbent raised about the water going into the tanks. And do you use the water from the sea to go into the tanks, or do you get it from the tap? I wasn't quite sure about that. I sympathise with Mr. Crawford and what's happened to him. And I think as a council, I'm sorry that you've been let down. I must say that openly. I've got a letter that I'm going to pass on to everybody, including the chairman, and it involves this bar. A lady called Miss Diana Tasker sent this letter about things to do with you know about it as well. Rich and I both got the copy, and she's concerned that things are looked at before the statue goes, which she's worried about the pollution coming out of this vent and things. So I'm going to pass that on to them. But all in all, I think people do come to Scarborough to go in the sea and I go in the sea. I admit that, as Ross did as well. And I think it's very difficult for people to understand that, yes, we take samples from May to September, and I agree as well that we should have samples through the winter. But it also confirms that how maybe stagnant the water is in summer and how we can correct this. Because I know I was privy to a testing within one bucket. One was poor, one was excellent. And I know for a fact that every reading we do is not always poor. But I think we must get this out to the public as well, that we're on a 4-year cycle. I think it's very, very confusing to people, is this. And the day that they actually go in the sea, that wash is probably excellent. I overlook it. I see the people who go in it. So I think somewhere along the line, it's communication as well, and letting people know what happens. But thank you all very much for coming today to give us your views, which are very, very important to the town. And I too, yes, you've mentioned fireworks, as the chairman had said, and various other things. So I think there's a lot there to look at for everyone. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Chairman.
Derek?
Thanks, Chair. Steve Crawford is no better advocate than what Steve is for drawing it to people's attention, the state of our sea. He has worked extremely hard, and I know as former leader of SBC and former colleagues of SBC sat around this table, it isn't the first time Steve's been in this council chamber advocating for cleaner water. I agree with Steve Crawford when he says about Yorkshire Water, and I'll be interested to hear how they're going to spend the money, because we just seem to be pumping, pardon the pun, more money into it, and it's good money after bad, and we're getting no further forward with that. I, like others, or as divisional member, were never invited to a summit of this bathing water quality, which I find amazing, when now the culprit to this is being identified as Scarborough Beck. Thanks.
Derek, I'm going to ask North Yorkshire Council to speak to that. But no, hang on. But in terms of the summit, and I'll only speak to councillors' involvement, as it became clear that the North Bay was more involved, we invited Councillor Broadbent to the last meeting. If the summit goes forward, as divisional council for Scarborough Beck, now we are clearer, you will be invited. But it started off with Councillor Jefferson and Councillor Moore for the South Bay, and me as chair of the area committee. And we, as I say, we extended that to Eric. Expect an invitation. As the problem becomes much clearer to us, and will be much clearer as today progresses, I sincerely hope. Sorry, Subash.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all three of you coming. And I think, Steve, you've taken a very principled stand, which I think many of us would consider. I would like to do that, but would lack the courage to do it. So all kudos to you for doing that. Ross, I did find your comments on the sand really interesting. It's something I hadn't considered, because sand is often used as a method for cleaning water. So if you've got a build-up and then you move it around, there could well be problems with it. But really, my question is to you, Andrew. If you take water from the North Sea on a regular basis, and you've been doing it since 1990, have you monitored the amount of badness in it over that time? And do you have any figures to tell us how it's deteriorated?
It's a really good question, because we test the water every day, because obviously the tanks that we have are very delicate ecosystems in a way, and they're all different. So I did ask my curator that question. So as I mentioned earlier, the water that we put into the seal pool is a fairly minor filtration. But even the water that goes into the tanks, it's filtered. There's a cleaning process, but the curator, it's pretty damn good, he said. That was the phrase he used to me about the water we're bringing in. So it can't be that polluted wherever we pump it, at the point that we pump it in. I can't tell you exactly where the pipe is. So that's, I haven't got some more detailed scientific response for, unfortunately, but I can certainly furnish you with that if you would like me to come back to you on that, definitely, and give you a bit more detail on what we actually do. But we do supply water to, I think we do supply a bit of water to the Deep, actually, who then use it in their quarantine tanks. We do supply water. We supply water to the seaweed people on the harbour side. We provide them with seawater as well for some of their work. So that's really where we stand with it. Yeah.
Would it be possible for those figures to be made available to the area?
No, absolutely. I'm really interested in the seasonality of your testing, Andrew. So I hear what you say. It's generally pretty good, unquote. But does that change as the summer season progresses? Because we're all a little concerned about peak tourism and the effect it may have on our water quality.
Just to add to that, sorry, something I forgot to mention actually in my presentation is we're regulated. Obviously, we're a regulated industry. We're regulated by the Zoo Standards Authority, which is a very sort of strict assessment process. And I think we've got the next one at the end of April, when the Zoo Standards Authority will be coming down and looking at everything, including all our paperwork, which will include water testing. But yes, certainly we can provide data or seasonal data.
That would be most welcome.
For you.
Circulate it to members of the committee, and I'll talk to my clerk about how we make that publicly available, whether we post that on our website so that everyone can see that. Right, I've got David Chancellor wants to speak. Does he get the last word on this? Is there any other councillor who hasn't spoken? Roberta, there's always one, isn't there? David.
Several things really. We talked, Steve, you talked about signage. I'm concerned about that, and I'll tell you why I'm concerned about it, because we had a similar situation up in Staithes a few years ago, where we had pollution, and the answer at that time by SBC was to deregulate the beach, so we didn't have to put signage up. And Yorkshire Water were in denial about the whole thing, and they blamed agricultural runoff. They blamed a pig farm. They blamed everyone, and we subsequently discovered actually it was a Yorkshire Water problem. And I don't know if you know the background to that, but it was a manhole that was blowing regularly and discharging through the beck. So I am concerned about the signage, the small signage. I question whether or not that's really, as you said, a token to get around the regulations. I would like to test that one out. Andrew, you talked about your scientific work, particularly with the mussel beds and things like that. Do we have seagrass in the area at all? Do you know if we have and if it's affected? Oh, sorry, I'll put my mic off.
I'll have to come back to you on that. I'm not sure, but yeah, the mussel bed project that's happening at the moment. So they're basically concrete boxes, and we've created artificial structures in those boxes by local children and visitors have made them, and that's to encourage mussel habitats that we then study them.
Thank you. And is there any thought to whether or not the crustacean mortality and the seas dredging might have had some effect? I should have declared I'm a member of the crustacean die-off working group, so as is Derek, yeah.
Okay, but as I understand it, that was talking more about pyrididine. Did I get that right? We are really concerned now about bathing water quality and the two bacteria that the EA tests for. So I don't know, Andrew, did you want to comment on that, or he's busy checking whether we've got seagrass? It's fine.
I haven't got any knowledge of that, I'm afraid. No,
that's absolutely fine. Thank you. Thank you, David. Roberta.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to say much because I want to listen to Yorkshire Water come on and tell us what their thoughts are, because we've got all these local people here, but what we haven't got is thousands of people will be coming this year They come from towns, cities. All they want to do is go to the beach. It's a cheap holiday. If they can get on that beach, go in the sea. This is absolutely awful. It's going on year after year. I live near Cape Bay and our water's fantastic. But there's got to be a problem in between, because I do know there's issues further down the coast. But I think we've blamed seagulls, we've blamed donkeys, we've blamed everything. They've been there for thousands of years. I can't see it's something like that. But we do. I mean, this gentleman's lost his livelihood, and taken away from Scarborough, something which was enjoyed by many. I know that because surfing is so popular. They come to Cape May, there's hundreds of them, they have competitions. So it's such a shame that that has to be taken away from someone. I do think we need to look at a general look. It could be, I mean, the lady, you said about the sand. I haven't thought of that, but it's a possibility. But I know McCain's have put a lot of money in, but they put a lot of things out as well, don't they, into that North Sea. So it could be a mixture of all sorts, but I want to wait. I'm going to say more when we've heard from Yorkshire Water, because I do believe they hold the key to all this, really, don't they? I mean, we've not got the answers, but we need answers, and we need them quick. We can't just keep going on year after year. I know we're doing lots of testing, but as Janet said, one day it can be brilliant, next day it's not. So there is something that, we've really got to get to the bottom of all this. Thanks.
Thank you. That's the questions from the councillors on this section of the agenda. Can I thank the three of you very much indeed? Steve, I'll add my apologies on behalf of us to how you were treated over that period. You've made me think really hard, and it's not just about the sand issue, Rod. I've got 9 questions that we will be asking. If I fail to deliver those questions, please drop me an email. I won't pick them up in the meeting, but we will follow up with those. I should let you know that Yorkshire Water are very good at attending the area committee meeting, and they do come every year. As you'll have heard, they're making some significant investment in Scarborough. I take your point, Steve, about what happened to the last lot of investment, but we will be keeping an eye on that, and you will be very welcome to either attending the gallery or indeed, I hope you don't have to ask the same question again, Steve, but ask questions when they do come round. You can see that we are really concerned about on two strands, really. One is the reputational risk of Scarborough poor water quality. I recognise tourism is a huge part of our economy, but I do think, and I know there's a question from our Sea Swimming Group, I do think we need to think about the quality of life of our residents as well. And those of us who live nearer are able to walk down frequently. I know a lot of people go down every day. It's a quality of life issue. It's the usage of our natural asset. Our residents deserve better. Our economy is, as I say, dependent on tourism. This reputational risk is going to damage our economy if we don't get a grasp on it. I understand that it's a 4-year cycle before we can say excellent, and that we really do need to invest and understand the issue now. But frankly, I don't think we can wait another 4 years. Another 4 years of poor and the shocking signage that we have to see, so we will pick those issues up. I'd like to thank the three of you yet again for making my brain ache, quite frankly, but thank you very much. It is. Thank you. Can I ask you to vacate the hot seats? And can I ask colleagues from North Yorkshire Council to join us, please? It's like dodgems. Thank you all very much. And I ask you all to introduce yourselves, save my voice, and remind you that I have got several questions that arose in the earlier session that may or may not be addressing what you want to talk about that we'll pick up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Joe Penny, Principal Officer to the Chief Exec, based in the Council's Strategy and Performance team.
Morning, everyone. My name is Carl Battersby. I'm the Corporate Director for Environment for North Yorkshire Council.
Morning, everybody. My name's Stuart Rowe. I am Coastal Manager, Harbours and Coastal Infrastructure, North Yorkshire Council.
Thank you. The papers have got a presentation in. Are you proposing to talk through that a little bit, Stuart? That would be great. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I feel like I'm going to repeat everybody else's comments, to be honest. Could you put the first slide up, St. John? It is good to be here. We're all like-minded. We all want to get it sorted out. We've been working on it for far too long. It's annoying. It's frustrating. It's bad for the town. We know these problems. As an officer, we're tired of it. We want it sorting out. But what I really intend to do today is just give you a brief outline of what we do as a council and then pass over to the more technical side of things from Yorkshire Water and the Environment Agency. Next slide, please, Sinjin. As we've heard this morning, it's a complicated problem. There are lots of inputs into this problem. Sewage, obviously, animal waste, wildlife, misconnected drains is a big issue. One of the previous speakers spoke about the sand. Most definitely, are there cultures growing within the sand that we're disturbing when we move it? We do dredging in the harbour. Does that disturb bacteria? They're all things that have been looked at, and I'm hoping the Environment Agency can give us some answers on that one. Now that we've started to focus on Scarborough Beck, agricultural runoff, the sea cut goes up the River Derwent, goes into the National Park. We have what we might call traditional farming practices. The problem is that we've got all these inputs, but which one's the most significant? They all probably do play a part, but how much of a part? And that's the unknown. That's why it comes down to science. And that's why we've all got to work together as organisations. One organisation really can't solve everything. Clearly, Yorkshire Water are a key component of that, but there's other inputs as well. And what we haven't really ever been able to do is determine the percentage of all these things. If we knew that, we could start to move towards a smoking gun and we could fix it, as we've done in other beaches up and down the Yorkshire coast. Next slide, please, Sinjin. North Yorkshire Council, its role is really about collaboration, bringing people together in meetings, in the Bathing Water Partnership, in the summit, getting those organisations together to really look at the problems. But I would like to bring to everybody's attention that the sampling, the testing, the criteria, they are set by the Environment Agency and DEFRA. Our input is relatively limited to that. Next slide, please. What do we have to do? And we've mentioned earlier the signage. We are instructed by DEFRA based on the Environment Agency's information on the previous year's sampling and the 4-year rolling average on what we need to put up as signage on our beaches. We don't really have a great choice in that. We can put up very complicated signs or limited signs, and you'll see them by the lifeboat station, down by Aquarium Top, and in the middle there near Bland's Cliff. We put those up on the RNLI, on the beach information boards, which I can't quite see on that slide, Sinjin, if you could just roll it up a little bit. Along with other beach information. And the South Bay is advice against bathing. And Mr. Crawford mentioned earlier the conundrum that we have with the RNLI, that the RNLI put up swim between the flags, inviting people down to the beach into a poor water quality beach. That is a problem. However, the RNLI have taken the view that they're there to prevent injury and mishap in the water, so they manage that beach. We had a big problem back in 2023, coming out of COVID, when nationally the RNLI looked at that and said, should we be inviting people to swim in a poor water quality beach? And there was a debate at that time, but subsequently they now man the beach. Next slide, please. We've got a range of things that we do as a council. We clean the beach. We have the dog control orders. We do the bins. We do the toilets.
wildlife, we have the goal strategy looking at the goals. Misconnections, we have planning controls. But ultimately, what we try to do is bring the partners together to keep everybody on board and to understand what's going on. And we have funded a couple of studies, which we'll refer to after my piece. We've fully funded a Durham University study. We put out a call to universities asking them, we have this problem in Scarborough. We don't really know what the cause is. We don't really know how to fix it. Is there anybody out there that can help us? And the professor is going to give us a talk on that. He came forward with a very good proposal. And we've also part funded some additional investigations by the Environment Agency, not the mandatory 20 samples a year, but looking at a much wider picture, including the sand, including the pond under the Spa footbridge, looking at the mere, looking at P-zone. There's lots of inputs here. I think the lady mentioned the pure volume of people on the beach. That is another concern because it's one of the most, if not the most popular beach in the UK. People come to it. Humans have an impact, we were assuming as well. But how do you measure these things? It's quite difficult. So it's really about the science. If we can get the science right, find out the problem, then we can solve it. Next slide, please. I think that might be the end of me, St. John. Yep. So with that, Chair, if you would like me to mention the sand relocation on the beach, I could do that.
Do you know you're a mind reader? I understand that dredging has to have a licence. And there's some testing as a result of that for harbour dredging, but it would be really good to understand the sand movement over the winter period. Like
all these things, it's swings and roundabouts, isn't it? We move the sand to prevent the waves running up onto the foreshore. It's an effect called freeboarding effect. If you've got a seawall and the sand and it's high up to the top of the wall, the waves will run up onto the foreshore. So we remove some sand every year, or sometimes every other year, depending on the sand levels on the beach, which we do monitor, so that when the waves come up, they hit the seawall and they return. They don't go onto the road. That's why we move it. We move it down to the Spa, and over time, because of the GER in the South Bay, there's an anti-clockwise current, and it moves slowly back. Sorry, clockwise current. It moves slowly back up onto the beach. And you see the accumulation of sand by the lifeboat station. Sand moves north. We move it.
Do we test that sand at the point that we move it, or do we simply bulldoze it?
We don't test it because we have no requirement to test it. But I do believe the Environment Agency, when they come to their piece, might mention that.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of other questions from earlier on, but I'll open it to the councillors while I get my brain in gear. So is there any questions? Derek.
Thanks, yeah. Thanks, Stuart. Regarding the RNLI, and you know my involvement with that as Vice Chair of the LGA-SIG, but don't we put ourselves in a dangerous position when we employ the RNLI to police the safety of the beach, and yet knowingly the water is not up to standard? We let people go in because the RNLI are there, or it would imply that the RNLI are there, so it's safe to go in. Have you any comments on that, Stuart, please? I agree. I think it's a difficult problem. It's a balancing act, isn't it, between water safety, because the RNLI know people will swim without the flags. I think that takes precedence over the other risk. But really, question for the RNLI, Derek, I can't answer that one.
Thank you. Janet?
Things really, Stuart, and you've mentioned it before. You and I battled, as you called it, through for how many years of the Yorkshire Water clean bathing, and we invested some £50 million. At the end of that time, I think it was Claire Glavina said, we won't get, she was disappointed to tell us all that we would not get excellent after all that work. And that was very, very concerning to me. After all the work that was done, the inconvenience of closing the Marine Drive, doing the tanks, doing everything else, we didn't get what we wanted. As far I've lived in my present place for nearly 45 years, and we've never had a blue flag award. A lot of it was on the management side, if we had a beach management centre and all things like this. But it concerns me that suddenly we did all that work, nothing improved it. And we used to have what we called a quality award when we tested it. Now we've got poor. And I can't understand how we had a quality award which was standing. And now, because of this 4-year cycle, we've suddenly got poor. And we can't overcome this 4-year cycle after all the work that was done by Yorkshire Water and the expense. And it was a battle, but I think we achieved a lot because we got the outfall done at Wheatcroft, didn't we? McCain's have invested an awful lot of money. So we have come on in great depth since that. But we can list, as you've said, the moving of the sand. I mean, the dredging of the harbour is done by licence. And so that will be tested as well. So it's a quandrum, isn't it, really, as to how we haven't moved forward with all the money. When, as I keep emphasising, we had a quality award until we had all this Yorkshire Water intervention. Now we've got a poor award, which is not very good. But we know, and I keep repeating this, it isn't poor every day. But how can we overcome this? Because we're doing so many tests, with so many a year, we aren't doing them all the year round. But as we said, it's the tidal flow that is causing this big problem. Anyway, thank you.
I'm not sure there was anything to answer in that one, really, that we haven't already talked about. Thank you. Rich?
Thank you, Chair. Do you agree with the leader of North Yorkshire Council who said last November, in quotes, "I don't think we're going to have many more of these summit meetings, if any at all," because it sounds like he's kind of saying it's job done. And I disagree with that. I think what these summits have done has led us to this point, and it keeps maintaining this subject of poor bathing water quality in the public eye. And I recall one of my first meetings, the EA, the Environment Agency, I asked them a question, how come Bridge seem to be getting a priority with their testing? And they said, quite candidly, it was because Scarborough, there was a lack of media focus and political scrutiny. So to me and the members in this room, I think we should be pressing for further engagement, maintaining the summits and inviting these people that have spoken this morning into the room. Thank you.
Is that one for you, Carl?
I think it probably is, Chair. Yeah, we have been discussing actually about setting up a further summit meeting. I think we wanted to have the discussion today. I know we're going to cover later in the meeting about the various other groups that are set up as part of the overall structure, and then potentially look at setting another summit up at the right moment in time. So we certainly don't think that this is the end of the issue at all, and we will continue to meet and have those partnerships in place until we get the matters resolved, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Eric?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, all interesting stuff. And to me, being practical, I see everything as a process of elimination. I mean, Stuart mentioned the crowds on the beach. Gosh, go back to the 50s, there was 10 times as many. You know, Scarborough's still busy and it's a great resort, but you know, historically we've had lots of people on the beach. So all I'm trying to say is that if we couldn't perhaps, I don't know, test the stands, test the harbour and go through process. Just let's eliminate. Let's try and find out what's causing this bug. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Did I call last orders? David.
No, it's just that Eric triggered something there because I worked on this beach in the 60s and I know how busy it was. You couldn't move. I would ask though, Stuart, if you think there's any merit in the possibility of there being overdevelopment, which is straining Yorkshire Water's ability to filter the waste properly. I say that because I'm very conscious that when I was on planning, we regularly got no comment from Yorkshire Water on the new development site. And I know for a fact that they've actually withdrawn their approval for a site in Pickering recently because it was proved that the overdevelopment was causing a problem.
Can't really comment on the overdevelopment question, but what I would say is we do have a very old infrastructure, Victorian heritage system, which has been grown on and added to over the years. But really, I think that's a question for Yorkshire Water, Councillor.
Thank you. So I've got a couple of questions to pick up from our guest speakers earlier. Not necessarily, at least one of them is not necessarily direct to water. I'm happy to take a written response later on if you think. First of all, just to clarify then, the Bathing Water Summit will continue, but its membership or its working groups will be extended to include others. Is that what we're saying, Carl?
I think we certainly, I think it's covered in one of the presentations, actually. It might be Yorkshire Waters around the stakeholder groups, and we are just considering the sort of timing and approach for a further summit, but I think the general intention is to have a further one. We just haven't firmed that up yet.
Okay, somebody mentioned runoff from streets, and Stuart's mentioned the Victorian system. So just so I'm really clear, when rain falls on our streets, does it go, and the West Pier for that matter, does it go straight into the sea or does it go through Yorkshire Water treatment? That's a Stuart question, obviously. I'm volunteering.
I'm volunteering, yeah. Theoretically, it all goes to Yorkshire Water system, but perhaps in extreme heavy rainfall events, it gets overloaded, and that causes some of our problems.
Okay, thank you. And related to that, it was just a general question about when we clean our streets, and I will pause to make sure I choose the right word and not the one I would use when I'm talking to someone, seagull guano, and we clean all that, where does that water go when we jet wash or use? Okay, thank you. And then the last one, it's about water quality, but obviously not bathing water quality. It's just on finite. I wondered if you got any comments about that, about what we're going to do differently maybe next year.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is there is actually bylaws in place that prohibit the setting of fires on the beach. We have been having some discussion about whether we do another public space protection order that would give us tighter controls, and also considering whether we might be more beneficial to actually have an organised event somewhere that people could attend, so it would stop people carrying out sort of impromptu events on the beach that cause the issues that we heard of earlier. So that's all things we're currently looking at and trying to put something in place before next bonfire night.
I know you're sorry. Go on then.
Thing you said, Mr. Roof said about the runoffs, and it's primarily the problem for Yorkshire Water. When they were building these retention tanks, one of the things we were told was if there's a large rainfall event, the initial drains will be cleaned by the thing which will be retained in the tanks, and the subsequent water that comes off will be cleaner, which can be discharged into the sea, which happens. Do you know if it has worked in that way, or was that just another fiction we were sold?
Apologies, Councillor. I think that's a question for Yorkshire Water. Yeah.
Thank you. If there are no further questions for the council representatives, thank you all for attending. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you as the afternoon or morning progresses, because there'll be things, clearly there's a crossover between who looks after what. So thank you very much. Professor Grock, would you like to come to the presenter's hot chair? I bet it's very hot by now. Thank you. Can I just say a few words? So we've talked about the Water Quality Summit and the problems that we faced. And one of the really, for me, really interesting things that came out of this was North Yorkshire's decision to say, let's have a look slightly differently. And as Joe Penny has said, to ask universities, and which is why Professor Darren Grock is with us. He has a challenging way of looking at things, and it complements the work and has made both Yorkshire Water and the Environment Agency think slightly differently and involved, now we know, Scarborough and the North Bay. So I think the work, it may be the first time some of you have seen this work. It's certainly, we've published the papers for anybody who hasn't had a chance to see them to go back and look at it. And I'm going to stop because when we start talking about isotopes of nitrogen, I've exhausted my knowledge. So Professor Glock, all yours.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for everyone for inviting me. This will probably be my last time talking because of no more funding. But what I wish to present today is a study that has been done globally using nitrogen isotopes, so stable isotopes in seaweed to trace pollution. Next slide, St. John. If you can just skip the title bit because you can't see the bottom. Yep. Well. As you'll see there, on the bottom, there is a scale, which is a nitrogen isotope scale that we use as geochemists. It's slightly out, but that's fine. All you have to do is remember those sort of numbers. And what you see is values near zero, which give us an indication that if we record values like zero in seaweed, it indicates that the pollution coming into the water is typically influenced by synthetic fertilizers, ammonia nitrate, or chemical pollutants like making paint and things like this. Whereas if you look at animal manure and human sewage, you can see that those values average around 10. Yeah. And there's a slight difference between raw and treated due to the process that happens in water treatment plants. But overall, they're still in that broad bracket around 10. And then you'll see to the bottom right, you've got the nice little seagull that we have around the coastal areas. And seabird guano has a value up there around 30. Now, when you take fucus, for example, in the top right, which is all around our coast, you can take a sample of that fucus, there's a little bit of the growing tip, it's about a square centimetre, and we use about 2 milligrams of that, and we analyze it in my laboratory. And that is combusted and produces nitrogen gas that we analyze in a mass spectrometer. If you get a nitrogen isotope value from that seaweed that is around plus 30, say, for example, you would say that the influence, the nitrogen pollution that's influencing that seaweed, because it takes up what's in the water, is by bird guano. If you analyze it and you get values near zero, you would say then that that seaweed is being influenced by chemical fertilizers or chemical treatment plants and things like this. Or if it's around 10, you would say it's influenced partly by human sewage or animal manure that's coming from agricultural areas. So it's not a silver bullet, but it gives us an idea or a concept of what could be influencing that. And as it was mentioned, various invites came around and I put my name forward to do a pilot study. And that was just undertaken over a few days. We generated data within a week or two, presented it at the first summit with North Yorkshire Council. And I came into this very naively. I didn't know really much about Scarborough or anything that was going on in Scarborough. The last time I visited Scarborough was nearly 28 years ago when I was studying fossil fish and ammonites and things like that as part of my PhD. And even at that first summit, I indicated that the North Bay or Scarborough Beck was a problem. Next slide, please. So as you can see there, if you can scroll just up a little bit more, you can see that these were all the sample sites that I collected seaweed, and we don't just collect one sample, we collect anywhere from 10 to 20 to 30 samples of individual seaweeds. We collected both fucus as well as ulva, which is a sea lettuce, but I'm mainly just going to focus on fucus today because fucus has an advantage that it records the nitrogen signal over about 13 to 30 days. So it's a nice averaging system. Whereas, for example, as been discussed, if you're sampling water to look for E. coli, you can grab one sample or another and they can give different results. And they're also recording a snapshot, a really quick viewpoint of what's happening in the water, whereas the seaweed is recording a sort of average over time. And you can see I've gone all the way from Filey Brig all the way up to Burniston and further, Haven and Wyke. you'll see in the following slides, and I know it was asked of me, Burniston is Scarborough Cove. It's named on the Google Maps and everything, so that is Burniston, so you know. If you can just move up a bit more. No, I meant down, sorry. Yeah, down, up, yep. Yeah, that's perfect, thank you. And we collected from September 2023, and as I mentioned, I indicated then that the North Bay was a potential source of the pollution. Now, not to blow your brains out with science and things like this, I've done that for 2 years now to the summit, so apologies to them. But what you see there is what we call an ISO plot, and essentially the colours represent whether it's good or bad. So you'll see the blues indicate based on the nitrogen isotope value of the seaweed that it's clean water. And as you go up to your oranges and then reds is where there is pollution. And that pollution is being caused by animal manure or sewage. And what you can see there from the different months, because I collected all through the year, every 3 months, and you'll see there February, May, August, and if you move to the next slide, and these are all of fucus species, and the circle represents not only the average for that site, but also the standard deviation of the results. And what you see there, just simplified, is the blue means it's clean, and the red means it's dirty with sewage pollution. If you move to the next slide. And so that's over that time period. And if you move to the next one, this is another sequence just carrying on, going to December, March, July, and I've collected another one in October, and also just recently volunteering my science I collected just this last month as well. And as you can see there, there's lots of different blues and reds. If you go to the next slide, and I may be going quickly through this, but really what you see there is through those different periods, you can see the blue, but then you can see also in July 2025, the entire coast is roughly polluted. So the entire coast of Scarborough was giving a pollution signal from sewage. But as you see from like December 2024, it still indicates that a lot of that sewage pollution is coming from the North Bay. It doesn't mean it's only coming from Scarborough, because of course the longshore drift along the coast comes from all the way up from Edinburgh all the way down. So there's probably a contribution from other sources as well, but overall it seemed to be pointing at the North Bay. Next slide. Yeah, ignore the title, please. So as you'll see there, and apologies for that one little image that says Ulva species, that's from another talk. It's meant to be fucus, because Ulva records a very short-term cycle, only over 24, 48 hours. So there, it's a little bit more complex to interpret, whereas the fucus is a lot more simpler, I say. So what you see there is that same graph that I had on the first slide, which is showing the nitrogen isotopes. And you'll see the average or the dominant range of delta 15 nitrogen values from the studies that I've done. And you'll see that it all points to animal or human sewage as the source of nitrogen that's coming around the coastline. There is no input of seabird guano because we're not moving towards those higher values. I have done some preliminary tests on the bird colonies further south, and we do get seaweed up around plus 25, plus 30, so which is clearly influenced by the seabird colonies. So we're not seeing that. We're not seeing sort of any indication of fertilizers or agricultural fertilizers coming in. Although there was one site in one period where the fucus went down towards zero, which indicated that it was a fertilizer event that actually polluted that region. We have also been doing E. coli, nitrate analyses, all this through the coast when we've been collecting. And they all also indicated that there was human sewage coming in as well as animal sewage. Next slide. So just ignore the title again. Yep. So if you see there, we can look at a comparison and you can see February and March. Generally, it's relatively clean. again, apart from further up in the north. And Haber and Wyke has been mentioned. There's certainly some pollution coming there, probably either from the agricultural farm there or also from the hotel that's there, and probably some sewage tank issues coming up there. But if you look at it then in August and July, you can see that it's a lot more polluted with the red dots, and again focused generally on the northern areas of the Scarborough, except in July 2025, where I mentioned that it's actually affecting the entire region. Next slide, thanks. So I've been funded for 2 years for this, and it was funded by North Yorkshire Council as well as McCain, who kindly contributed to a master's project, a master's student who was doing this work with myself. And even just visiting the sites over the year, we could see dramatic changes. And I know it's a little bit non-scientific, but through all the work that I've been doing around many other coasts of the UK, we started going to sites and we could see lots of green seaweed, ulva and all that, and we saw big fucus and things like this. And we thought, this is really clean, this is really healthy, you know, these look healthy plants. Whereas in fact, that actually is reverse psychology. It was actually polluted because they were influenced by, same as your plants. If you give it lots of nitrogen, it will grow bigger and look healthier. And you can see that nearly all the time around Scarborough Beck and the outlet from Scarborough Beck. Sometimes it's completely green with sea ulva. And so through our 2-year study, we sort of indicated and pointed to the North Bay as being a source area for the nitrogen pollution. It was traveling down around the Scarborough Point into Scarborough Harbour and into the Scarborough South Bay. And of course, as Stuart has mentioned, there's sort of a clockwise circulation there that would probably concentrate that pollution there, making it look like the South Bay is much more polluted when in fact it's really coming from the North Bay. And I know the Claire from the EA and myself at the last summit mentioned about the sea spreading. I came down to collect samples at one point and to do some filming with news media and noticed the whole beach was being dug up. And I wrote to North Yorkshire Council saying, what the hell is going on here? Why is this happening? Because any sort of geologist like myself or geochemist would know that those sediments, those sands will be holding pollutants and nutrients as well as viruses and bacteria. And they were moving it down to the spar. And of course, that sand is going to transport further northwards, again, exacerbating the pollution signal in the South Bay. And really, that's sort of more or less the end of the story. And I'd like to thank North Yorkshire Council as well as McCain, although I don't think they're here today, for this study. And it's certainly given us some insight into this area. And of course, it's on the back of that, there's many other studies going on from my lab with other councils and other bays around the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from councillors? I appreciate it's quite scientific. Oh, fabulous. Sebastian and then Rich.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this study. I think it's the first time that I'm aware of that a proper study has been done to analyse what the situation is. And only when you know what the source is can you begin to put in place systems to change it. A couple of things that you said. You emphasised animal and human sewage as being the main cause. Have I understood that to be correct? That is the main dominant cause which we have to tackle, which really means it's two sources: Yorkshire Water's treatment of the runoffs or the sewage, and the other part is runoff from agricultural land with animals. Now, I do remember a couple of years ago we had a planning application which was literally for standing room for cattle, where all the sewage that would be accumulated would just be taken away and not really dealt with in any particular way. The Environment Agency were happy with that and said it conformed. Now, one of the things that's coming through is there is no overall authority to implement anything, and everybody has rights and freedoms, and they seem to be counter to what we're trying to achieve here. So I would love you to make some statement as to what kind of systems we need to put in place. The other part of it is there was only one fertilizer event that you came across. So really that's an odd event. So the main force is sewage and whatnot. What do you think could be done by Yorkshire Water to prevent this leakage coming in? Because it's obviously from Scarborough back, it's transporting it down. And the other question I want to ask you is, if removing the sand on a regular, it happens on a very regular basis, has an influence on it. I know a long time ago, we used to sell the sand until events happened. Do you think this cosmetic exercise we do to make sure that sand remains on the north side of the South Bay or on the south side of the South Bay is something we should let go of and accept that if we're going to remove the sand, because there are problems with the sea and how it impacts upon the South Bay roads and surface areas, that we should take that sand and remove it from there and not redistribute it? Would that be a sensible way forward? Thank you.
Let me see, there's several questions there. I'll start off with the first one with regards to the Scarborough Beck and animal pollution as well as human pollution. There is groundwater sources, so even a farm that holds its manure in an area, a lot of that nitrogen is going to drain into the groundwater that comes naturally out of the Scarborough Beck. That is something you're not going to be able to control at that sort of level, so you just have to accept that. As Stuart has mentioned, I'm sure Yorkshire Water would agree that some of their systems need upgrading, need fixing. Through the work that I've been doing over these few years, I've pointed out certain areas, and they have been going around and fixing it. So even small things. One way is, for example, and it's not just the Yorkshire Water problem, I don't think it's a national problem, is that there has to be more strict regulations on CSOs when they can happen. There has to be more regulatory testing of those CSOs and the water that comes out from them. But then another key and critical thing, I believe, is not just knowing the hours of leakage, because some of that may be millimeters per hour, it could be tens of hundreds of liters per hour, is that we need to know the actual amount of water that's coming out of the CSOs and down into Scarborough Beck or into our rivers and into the ocean, because hours don't tell us much, but volume does. So even those little things, and as Yorkshire Water have been doing over these 2 years, through the summit and myself working collaboratively to try and find solutions or find where the problems is. And then from that, you could develop some solutions or some way of reducing those sort of sources. With regards to the sand, I believe that would be something that I think Stuart would like to answer. I'm passing the buck, really. Now, we haven't tested that. No one's tested that, and it's something that has come out of this study with the EA and myself. And I think that's something we could do in the future, is analyze that and see what potential issue that may have on our cleanliness of the water there.
Thank you. I am concerned that you said the funding has stopped. If we're really going to manage this situation and work towards alleviating it, we will need to monitor whether what we've done has made any difference at all. So it is important, I think, we as an area committee commit to further funding and further testing to see whatever has been done actually results in some improvement. So thank you for what you've done. I hope this funding will be started at some point to test what we've done and how effective it has been. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to come back on that point, the area committee doesn't have a budget, but we do have the power to make recommendations. And as we've been going through, I've noted a couple. So I think Stuart said that the Environment Agency had tested the sand this year. However, we might make a recommendation that we routinely test that sand before we start shifting it. The overdevelopment of housing, which I know that people couldn't comment on, but I understand Yorkshire Water is not necessarily a statutory consultee. and we can pick, I'm nodding at me, can pick that up, but there might be a recommendation that we ask them to be a statutory consultee. Not sure how that plays out legally. And yes, I agree. This is a different way of looking at something. And it moves us away from just talking about the 2 bacterial contaminants to think more largely about the quality of our water. We can make a recommendation for an extension. I don't know how that would go down, but actually what we should be doing, which is back to Mr. Crawford's point, we should be checking what Yorkshire Water is doing. And so when they do some investment, we might think about, is Professor Grott's work something that we would like to commission then, or indeed might Yorkshire Water like to commission it then? You don't have to nod at me at that point. Commission it then as a quality assurance that there is an impact being done. So I think that's a really helpful and really good question, Steve Ash. Thank you. Sorry, I have now got Rich.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report. I think it's brilliant. And I concur with what's just been said there. Question though is this: how do you see, alongside the other actions that might be taken by polluters, but sustainable solutions? Because I am aware of a local business, Seagrown, who do offer a sustainable solution insofar as they can plant areas of seaweed in areas which is you've just spoken to. They absorb and feed off these nitrates and actually soaking up pollution. So how do you see that actually becoming effective rather than just a site for sampling, but actually something to help mitigate? And the second question, would you understand as I'm going to be calling for a pilot study with regards to endotoxin rapid testing, and which is a completely different. It will sit alongside and complement work being done, and of course that's looking at another factor. But would you think an extensive study on that would also complement the work that you've progressed? Thank you.
Yes, I've been in discussions with Seagrown and talked about ideas about using seaweed aquaculture as a way of absorbing those excess nutrients. There are other ways, of course, such as mussel farms and aquaculture that can actually help absorb those. You can even go up to the Scarborough Beck and use aquatic plants that will absorb all those excess nitrates and phosphates. Those are all viable solutions, and I wouldn't advise against them. They can all benefit both the removal of nutrients, but also the biodiversity and things like that in those waters. The one problem that you'll always run into that is that you've then got to farm that seaweed, and then what do you do with it? And of course, there are other studies I'm doing with farmers looking at seaweed as a biofertilizer for various crop systems. But of course, you then have to test all that seaweed for all other potential toxic elements and pharmaceuticals, all sorts of things, because they love absorbing everything. So I think those sort of natural solutions are something that we should be looking at overall. And then the other study, you mentioned something, even myself as a scientist, I don't know what that is. But of course, one thing I can say to it is that, you know, in the past, we've always used the bathing water quality, looking at E. coli and intestinal E. coli. And really what we should be doing is a multi-proxy attempt, which is exactly what you're sort of indicating, is that not one is giving us a clue of the environment, but actually using multiple tools that then all point to the same sort of issue. Then we have a much stronger argument to then try and clean things up.
Thank you. Just refer you to page 9 of Yorkshire Water, where they do talk about partnering with Seagrown and the Kelpedos. Very proud of Seagrown, and pivoted from seaweed farming and harvesting into cleaning the water with bivalves and using Kelpedo as the tool. So that they are already engaged with that. I think your point's really well made, Professor. We focus on bathing water quality because that's the thing that we see. But actually the entire quality of the water is really important. Are there any further questions for Professor Glock? Eric.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Professor Crock at the last summit. He certainly did indicate the possible source of the many problems that we have got with regards to North Bay and Scarborough Beck. And I'd like to thank him for his extra work on top of that, which really highlights the fact that we are looking very, very closely at the point that needs to be looked at, as I mentioned in the past. My question basically is that if Yorkshire Water concentrate in this area and we have success in that area, and it still doesn't eliminate the dangers that we know could be there, how does that affect, in layman's terms, not scientifically, stopping people swimming in our seas? Do you have any scientific bars that I'm trying to work out, you know, which we can't swim in that sea or we can scientifically? Have you any information on that? Thank you.
I think I'm going to have to bypass that question. If the improvements are made from Scarborough Beck, Yorkshire Water, everything else, and there's still a problem, then I think we have to look wider at where that problem's coming from. Because if you solve the solution near the source, or what we think is the source, but it's still there, then there's something wider, a wider issue going on. Now, whether that has to do with climate change, marine heat waves, algal blooms, that would have to be investigated in the future. I can't answer about advising swimming or not. Sorry.
Derek.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. It would be interesting to know, Professor Crockett, the rainfall at the time that these tests were taken, because the sea cut invariably in summertime, where it peaked with the red on your drawing with respect. The sea cut invariably, you can walk across it because it's nearly bone dry, north of Scarborough, Axe Road Bridge, which maybe won't mean a lot to you. So it would be interesting to know what the rainfall was, because I would think it's very little coming down at that time. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, so every time I've come, there's always been water. Yeah, you'll be able to walk through it, but you'll get wet shoes. We have thought about looking at the precipitation event, but it makes it a very complex. It's not just as simple that you get rain and it comes straight out. There's a lot of processes in which that water is trapped in some way, whether it be from holding tanks, whether it also be in groundwater. So I don't think there's essentially a direct relationship between precipitation and these pollution events, because there's a lot more that needs to be investigated on the land. Because of course we're focused on the coastal area, but there's a lot of processes happening on the land that also need investigating: transport times of water and when CSOs or when other areas are releasing pollutants into that basin. So it's a whole basin thing that we should be looking at, not just the coast. And although that's been the purpose the last few years, I think further, and I think Yorkshire Water and the EA have discussed about this, is going further up the beck and looking further inland at potential sources and contributions. So I think that's a very valuable thing that we need to do. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Right, so thank you. Thank you for the challenge as always that the work gives me personally, and thank you for councillors for giving it the attention it needs. I sincerely hope it's not the last time we see you, because I think it just brings a different perspective, as you've said, to the quality of water overall, not just bathing water quality. And I think that's a thank you from everybody here. Thank you very much. Members, I'm going to propose we call, a short comfort break, particularly for myself, but also for all of us to have a leg stretch. I've just conferred with my vice chair. If we come back at 11:45, please, and then we'll go into the next presentation and then conclude the morning, if that's all right. Thank you all very much. Our next item, or our next speakers, are from the Environment Agency. So thank you very much for attending. I can't see Claire. So who have we got from the Environment Agency, please?
Hi, good morning. My name is Mike Duggar. I'm the Environment Agency's Area Director for Yorkshire, and apologies from Claire Barrow. Claire's been unwell for a week or so, so she's not able to join us today.
Okay, thank you very much. So we do have, before, I don't know where they are, but if you can find them, feel free. So before we get on to your presentation, there is a public question. So is that from Karen? Are you going to read the public question out? Can you just, I don't know where to get you to a speaker microphone. No, it won't work. The acoustics here are shocking. We can pass you on over. Here we go. Oh, thank you. So this is, it's all right, just take a seat, Karen. Karen Siverall from Scarborough Sea Pool with her questions. So over to you, Karen.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, can everybody hear me? I'll stand up actually because I'm quite little. So we're Scarborough Sea Pool Community Interest Company. I'm one of the three co-directors, which sounds rather grand, but we are all voluntary. Our aim, quite ambitious but serious aim, is to have a new tidal sea pool back in Scarborough again, and the preferred location for this has been identified as what we call Children's Corner, which is slightly to the south of the main South Bay beaches round from the Spa. Having read the papers for the meeting, we do think that current monitoring period, 15th of May to 30th of September, and only 20 times during that period, it doesn't meet the year-round nature. You've heard today, we swim and surf and use the sea all year round. So we really want that acknowledged, and we want year-round testing done across all the bays, all the areas, not limited to a small number of testing locations, and we want to be involved in that as far as possible. We can swim and test or surf and test. Also, second part is for Yorkshire Water. You say you've consulted with Surfers Against Sewage in your paper, Surfers Against Sewage and Sons of Neptune. We want you to make you aware there's loads of active sea swimming groups and sea swimmers and surfers. Again, we want that to be broadened out. We definitely want to be involved in that bathing water partnership. I gave out some leaflets earlier, so you've got our email address and our website. More information about our project is on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Would you like to respond to that, or do you want to wait for the next public question? It's entirely up to you. There were two for you.
I'm happy to kind of wait for the next one if that's all right.
Could I ask Elizabeth Marriott to come, please?
Hi, I'm also with Scarborough Sea Pool Campaign, but I'm here kind of representing myself as a very keen sea swimmer. I go down to South Bay for a swim most days. When I first came to Scarborough, which was only 4 years ago, I started swimming almost immediately. I was incredibly poorly upon swimming in the sea, had to have an ambulance come to the house, wanted to admit me to hospital. It probably was something quite nasty like E. coli, given the severity of my symptoms. I am a healthcare professional by background, so I just wanted to add that history as well. My question, it has been answered a little bit earlier, but I still want to put it to the Environment Agency as well. In the recent water quality review, a list of reasons for poor water quality at South Bay were given. So, discharge of sewage via water company overflows, animal waste, misconnected drains, agricultural runoff and urban runoff. Whilst this presents a widespread picture of culprits, what is the more accurate picture? What is causing the majority of negative impact to our water? we ask you to quantify, provide percentages for each of these data points to explain the picture more accurately. That's it.
Thank you. And if we take the response and then, I'm sorry, Karen's moved, there's the stiff day there, because you do have the right for a quick follow-up question, if you think that would be helpful, if there's a point of clarity. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll just introduce myself first. I'm Martin Christmas. I'm an environment manager at the Environment Agency, and my teams cover water, land and biodiversity, and I'm here because Claire is absent. But I do have, I do have a long history of working on bathing waters, and I'm aware of the situation at Scarborough. In terms of the period May to September, I think DEFRA have gone out to consultation on extending that. So if we get the green light to do it and they send us some funding to do it, we would love to do it. We recognise that, a lot of the surfing, particularly in South Bay, goes on when all the other beaches are blown out, and it being a south-facing beach does well in northerly swells. In terms of the, so I'll try and cover your question in the presentation, but we're using a number of techniques. So we're looking for those two bacteria. We're using a technique called microbial source tracking, and we're also looking at bacterial communities. And the issue that gives us is that the DNA markers for some of the animals and sources that we're looking at under the microbial source tracking are slightly different. I'm kind of circling around, kind of saying if we could give a percentage of a source apportionment, an accurate one, I think we would do that. So we're basically saying these are the sources that we've got, and they're either a strong or a weak indicator, and we should either consider them or consider them irrelevant. I'm afraid that's the best we can do with the scientific techniques that we've got at the moment.
Thank you. Is there a follow-up, Elizabeth?
So just being a layperson, I didn't really understand that. Could you, out of that list that I gave you, animal waste, misconnected drains, agricultural runoff, urban runoff, which one would you indicate is like kind of the worst culprit? Because earlier on we heard Professor Brock say like seagull guano is not an issue. When we read in the report it was an issue, when it's clearly not. We don't want to be looking and focusing on the wrong thing.
I think that's right. So what Professor Grock has also described is he's using a different technique, and this is why the situation is complicated. Is what he would say it's not seabird guano using the techniques that he's looking at. What I'm going to tell you is that seabird DNA markers are always present at South Bay and North Bay. So you have to take those two pieces of evidence together. You can't just say because one piece of science has said one thing that you disregard another. It's just a fact from using different monitoring techniques and tools.
Thank you. Karen, did you want to? I think you need to get to a speaker, Karen. I'm really sorry. I think it's a struggle. Sorry, Martin, did you want to answer Karen's question as well? And then Karen can follow up with whatever.
Yeah, of course.
So I'll let you answer the question first and then Karen will come back in. Karen's first question, or was it more of a statement, Karen? Sorry.
No, it's out for consultation that DEFRA considering.
Sorry, Mike. Long morning. Did you have a follow-up, Karen? Yeah.
Yes. So out for consultation. What's that process involved? What's the timescale for that? What can we?
I can answer some of that.
Yeah. So what can we do to be involved in that?
So that consultation, Karen, that consultation has closed. This area committee made representation to North Yorkshire. That representation said, as people like Ros and Janet have all said, that's used year round. we would like that testing period extended. We are encouraging active tourism, so we want surfers and sea swimmers to be able to use the sea. It has gone in, it's closed now, you can't do anything about that now. It has gone into DEFRA, and as Martin has said, we're waiting for DEFRA to come back to us. I've got exactly that question on my list of questions as to when we will hear that. The issue then becomes if the Environment Agency test, correct me if I get this wrong, between May and September, 20 times is the core funding, that if we want them to test longer and more, then will DEFRA allocate funding for that? And I suspect that is why we have not heard anything. Do you want to add to that, Martin, or have I covered it?
I think you've summed that up very nicely.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Elizabeth. Right, so now we'll move to your presentation then, please.
Okay, can I have the second slide up? The first one's just a kind of hello. Okay, so this sums up what we do routinely with in terms of bathing water. So as you've said, we monitor where bathing water is designated up to 20 times a year. So 20 times is about once a week. Is our frequency, and we're looking for two bacteria, E. coli and intestinal enterococci. These we also refer to as fecal indicator organisms because they tend to come from feces. That is the health risk. What I would say on that is that all the health risk from swimming in water with FIOs in goes back to science done by the World Health Organization way back in the 1970s. So they are indicator organisms. As has been mentioned previously, there are other things in the water that might make you ill, but these indicate where you might have sources of feces from various sources that might impact human health. But the Environment Agency is not a health authority, it's an environment authority. It collects environmental samples to help describe this picture. So we've mentioned as well already the 4-year rolling average. So just to clarify, we take samples every year, and those samples are grouped together going back 4 years. So the classification that you'll have for 2025 will have been based on samples taken in 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. And those are grouped together to give you the classifications that go from poor to excellent. And it's important to keep that in mind because in any 1 year, the water quality can be very different. So I've heard people say we're bound by this 4-year cycle. 2022 was a particularly bad year for South Bay, 2025 and 24 less so. So if we get a similar year to 2025 in 2026, we may see a change in classification. We may see a change in classification. Okay. So in addition to that standard sampling, we investigate water quality incidents, and we also do investigation work. And I'll come on and then describe some of the investigations that we've done. If we move on to slide 3, this gives you the overall quality of the 2 beaches in Scarborough South and North Bay. So the bathing water regulations changed in 2013. They became much stricter, and we started sampling under that new regime in 2015. So we've heard mention of the work that was done on Marine Drive and the investment that Yorkshire Water made. That was in preparation at the time for the change in the Bathing Water Directive. So I think I'm sure Miles will tell how much they invested, but I think it was somewhere over £100 million on that toll house section. And that was seen at the time as the magic bullet, the thing that we should follow, and that we were going to get excellent bathing water quality. I think what that does highlight is, again, it reinforces this situation that the water quality pressures in Scarborough are quite complicated. and there are multiple sources that we need to consider, and it would be risky to follow another magic bullet without taking into account all the data that we've got. Okay, if we go on to the next slide. So we've done investigations from 2014 to 2023. We've undertaken a detailed analysis of the compliance samples, so those are the 20 samples a year. And we've also taken into account a number of different techniques that have looked at this microbial source tracking. And what we understand is that we're having, we get FIOs introduced from humans, seabirds. The McCain's final effluent was part of the picture, dogs, and on limited occasions we get ruminants, i.e. cows and sheep. So this microbial source tracking technique further analyses that bacteria, and we've got a number of markers there. So the McCain's effluent, because it doesn't contain MST markers, i.e. it doesn't contain feces because it comes from potatoes, not feces, we've used a bacterial profiling technique to understand how that source is affecting the two bathing waters. So following on from some of those early investigations, we've worked with McCain's over a number of years, and they needed to be compliant with the new BREF regulations for the food and drink. So that's the European regulations on their effluent, and they've invested a deal of money to reduce the quality of their inputs from their site. What we do know from that is that we're picking up bacteria from McCain's. We picked it up in both South Bay and North Bay, which is interesting because it suggests that there is water movement from south to north, as well as what's been described already from north to south. Okay, if we have a look at the next slide, please, Sinja. So for South Bay, we're picking up human and seabird sources of bacteria, constantly present. Occasionally we're finding dogs, and very occasionally cows and sheep in South Bay. Whoever mentioned donkeys earlier will be pleased to know that donkeys seem to be exonerated from this situation. Okay. And for North Bay, we're picking up markers that show human and seabird sources of bacteria consistently present. And the seabird markers are at much lower concentrations compared to those found in Scarborough South. So this goes some way to answering Karen's point around, the other lady's point around, can we put a percentage against it? We can't, but the signal strength of the diagnostic tool does suggest that the seabirds in South Bay are more of an influence than the seabirds in North Bay. That's as far as we can go with that. What we can also say is that for the ruminant sources are associated with rainfall, and that they're likely linked to Scalby Beck. Ruminant markers were only found in Scalby Beck and P-zone Beck, but these were present on very limited occasions, and on occasion at Scarborough North, there is a strong relationship with, or a stronger relationship with heavy rainfall. So again, a complicated picture that's not just about the sources, but also what the prevailing weather conditions are at the time. We go on to the next slide. So in addition to the MST, which is a kind of DNA fingerprinting technique, we also looked at the total bacterial community profiles. So what groups of bacteria were commonly found together in certain situations. The bacterial profiling highlighted the presence of bacterial communities indicating seabirds again, both at North and South Bay, but couldn't provide evidence on whether this was the presence of the birds at these particular locations, or whether it was seabird-related bacteria communities washing in from other beaches, either north or south of North Bay and South Bay. It should also be noted that the McCain's bacteria community was found both in north and south, so reaffirming that north-south or south-to-north water movement link. The community associated with Scarborough wastewater treatment works was most pronounced and coincided with cultural bacteria. So one of the things that we're trying to understand here, when you look at the DNA techniques, is that they will be getting a signal from fragments of bacteria and fragments of DNA within them, rather than a cultural bacteria, which is what we used for the compliance test. So the cultural bacteria will have a living, reproducing element that is picked up through that technique. And there are other complicating signals that come from fragments of DNA in that MST technique. What that does tell us about Scarborough is that it indicates that there are sources of human bacteria that aren't just from the wastewater treatment works, and we need to think carefully about private sewage works and cesspits and other matters, rather than just focusing on Yorkshire Water's assets. Okay, next slide, please. So we have carried out regulatory inspections of Yorkshire Water's assets. We haven't found any breaches with their permit, but we have found items that we would issue as advisories under our compliance assessment regulation forms. Okay, next slide. So this is what we're proposing to do in future. We've currently got continuous water quality monitors that we refer to as SONs, located in Scarborough, Cowbeck, Wathbeck and P-zone Beck. These are not collecting bacterial information, but they will collect physical and chemical information that can give you an indication as to when water quality is changing. We're also planning, due to the work that Professor Grock has done in terms of indicating agricultural inputs along Scarborough Beck and the aerial photography work that Yorkshire Water have done, we're going to be doing or focusing a lot of our agricultural inspection work. So our ag team will be including the Scarborough Beck catchment, and that is largely around under farming rules for water, making sure that agribusiness is complying with best practice standards along that water body. Okay, final slide. So our understanding at the moment, when we produced this, was around the water industry investment program, environment program, around the 4 assets that are confirmed to be part of AMP8 from Yorkshire Water, to be delivered by March 2030. So these are all part of the storm overflow reduction program that came out as part of the last Environment Act from government to reduce spills from CSOs. And we know those assets are already in AMP8, and if there are further additions, I'm sure colleagues at Yorkshire Water will tell them about us, tell us about them in their presentation.
I've got a number of questions. Okay. Chair's privilege goes first. And David Chance has indicated he's got a question. Derek, Bash. Right, I'll launch into mine then. So back to the slide where it shows the water quality over a number of years. It's a fact, isn't it, that South Bay has always been poor, except over the COVID period. So it was poor in 16, 17, 18, 19, and then again 22, 23, 24, 25. So it's a long-standing problem. Has there been previous work done by the Environment Agency in that area, sort of going back to 26 or 2016 or whatever?
That's just the data following the.
So there's been no deep dive investigation. This is it. The deep dive we're talking about now is the only work that's been done on that about South Bay. Yeah.
Well, we've been working on South Bay since Bathing Water Directive brought us into play. Those data there are largely from when the bathing water regulations changed and the monitoring became, or the compliance limits became more stringent.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
But I can get you the data before that. If you think it's relevant.
And then in North Bay, it's been excellent, good, excellent, excellent. And then it started to fall in 2023 onwards. Was there anything changed in sort of, well, it might be 22 to 23, anything changed to the feeder systems for North Bay? Anything that we're aware of? I can think of one thing, but I'm speculating. No, not that you're aware of.
Not that we're aware of.
So
which is why it's become a priority bathing water for us, because it's changed, and previously, I guess we relied on it maintaining its excellent status because it always had done.
Okay. And I know, and I'm sure members and residents here know quite a lot of housing development. I'm not apportioning blame. I'm just saying that's the material change that I am aware of in that area. If anybody's got any further information, please make it known. Can I talk about seabirds? So always present on the coast, as we've all heard. We are lucky. I know we don't always feel lucky because they are protected species and they're absent from other areas. So that is almost our baseline, isn't it? They've always been there. And I guess that's back to my next question then. Has something changed about the seabirds that we're aware of? Is there more? I don't think there's more of them. It's a bit rhetorical because what's changed for the council is we are a lot more robust in cleaning up the guano after so many complaints from the public, particularly, we all know it, don't we? Vernon Road, down the side of Poundland, absolutely pongs, it's disgusting. So we scrub it clean, sometimes twice a day at 6 o'clock in the morning. But I just wondered if you thought you had any speculation. I accept it would be speculation on that. No change to population or anything?
I don't. Not that I'm aware of. I haven't seen any ornithology reports saying that they have increased or not. What I would say is that on the Fylde coast around Blackpool, they were found. It was found that birds roosting under the pier were the key reason for that bathing water failing. So I know it's tempting to kind of dismiss it.
Oh, no, I wouldn't want to dismiss it.
But I would, from the work that we've done previously and the investment that's been done previously, I would please keep seabirds as a serious table.
Our equivalent would be Scarborough, and we all know that they nest there and things there. Just to let everybody know that Norfolk Council is currently doing a bull strategy, and it's due to come to the area committee quite soon. That will have some detailing about how we're going to approach dealing with gulls, part of our environment. Mainly it's around, and I don't use the word lightly, but beats the press, seagull attacks, but also ripping up of rubbish bags and dispersal of rubbish that herring gulls are responsible for, not kittiwakes. And finally, just put my mind at rest. We talk about E. coli as being in faeces. Is E. coli ever present in urine? Human urine. I'm thinking of the practice of perhaps not rushing to the toilet when you're already in the sea.
I don't know is the answer to that.
Okay. Thank you. David.
Can I just ask, on the goal strategy, does the goal strategy link to bathing waters?
That is a really good question to which I don't know the answer, but we can take that back and make sure that we pick that up. I think it's due to come to us quite soon. Is it June? June. It's coming to our June meeting, but I will get the officers responsible to perhaps touch base with you. I think that would be really helpful, Martin. Thank you for the suggestion. David.
Yes. I have a concern around agricultural runoff, and I just wonder how much slurry spreading can cause when there's heavy rain. That's the first thing. And I'm also very well aware that some water companies sell sewerage waste to farmers. I don't know if it happens in this area. I would be interested to know, but if sewerage waste is also spread on the land, that could well be accounting for markers of human waste in the water as well on runoff. Has any thought been given to that?
So what I would say is agricultural runoff is definitely an impact on bathing waters. So the bathing water that I'm most familiar with is the freshwater one at Ilkley on the River Wharfe, which I think we can say if you removed all of your Yorkshire Water's assets would still fail due to agricultural runoff due to the 100,000 sheep and 10,000 cows in the catchment. I think what we can do from the Environment Agency's perspective is make sure that farm businesses comply with farming rules for water and that there are suitable management of slurry to prevent that runoff from late spreading, or particularly on a year like this when it's been incredibly wet over the winter and all the slurry tanks are full and people are desperate to get out and start using the fertilizer, just to make sure that they don't do that when there's a risk to that being washed off into the watercourses. On the second point around sewage sludge and the use of sewage sludge, I probably have to take that away because I don't fully understand the treatment process and whether that would kill off any human DNA within sewage sludge as part of that treatment process.
Yeah, I would be interested just if you could check your heavy rainfalls and if there's an increase in human waste markers at that time, as well as agricultural waste markers, because private treatment and septic tanks, etc., may not be just the sole cause.
Thank you. Derek?
Thank you, Chair. I had 4 questions, and I was pleased to see there's an indication for further investigation at Coworth Beck. So that's the first one answered, actually. Three other questions are, isn't it? For the former Scarborough Council refuse site and the possibility of leaching into Coworth Beck there, has that been investigated?
We can probably take that one offline. I mean, most regulated landfill sites will not be in hydrological connectivity with the groundwater. They will be inside a sealed unit. But if you give me the details, I will take that back to our landfill team and see if they have any concerns about that particular site.
I can assure you this, it isn't sealed, because I walked down Coworth Beck the other day and it's running, the bank side down towards Coworth Beck is nearly running in water. Similarly with the old Scarborough Urban District Council tip, no doubt there'll be leaching from there, which has been sealed off for many a year. And whilst you won't be aware of it, but others in this room may well be aware of it, the access to the present household waste recycling centre is over a metal bridge. And if anybody goes up there and just glances down to the left, you'll see a 12-inch pipe discharging fluid into Coworth Beck, leaving a large rusty coloured stain, for the want of a better word, for at least 15 metres down the riverside, and various amounts of froth being circulated down there as well. So I thank you for giving me the chance to ask those, Chair, because I've got a doctor's appointment at 1 o'clock. So
I do, Derek, and
Yeah.
I think I'm running the list of recommendations.
yeah,
I think there is absolutely one for North Yorkshire Council about working with the EA around assurances around current and old landfill sites. Points well made. Sorry, Martin, would you like to come back on that, or is it just that we'll send you some info and we'll work with you?
No, that's it. As I say, that's these meetings are always useful to pick up that kind of local intelligence. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Sorry to lose you, but thank you for that contribution, Derek. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Addressing the agricultural runoff issue, does the Environment Agency, or more likely DEFRA, have any sort of powers to restrict types of farming in the catchment area, and would that be beneficial?
I think the only powers that we would have to exercise would be under farming rules for water, which is around making sure that agricultural muck is kept 10 metres from watercourses, and then under the what's known as the SAFO regs, the storage of fertilisers, oils, fuels, and slurry, just to make sure that people are compliant with that storage and that it's not leaking, that it's on hard standing, that rainwater doesn't affect it. Those general pollution prevention principles that we follow.
Thank you. Sebastian.
Thank you. Just a question, I think it was brought out just earlier about heavy rainfall and the impact it has. Now, it does take some time for water to fall somewhere, work its way through the land and the system. Do you have any data which gives you indication of what time frame we're talking about? Because obviously in July and August, the professor's data said that things deteriorated. That doesn't mean to say something happened the day before it happened. It could be months before. And getting a correlation with agricultural activity and human activity with what's happening is very, very important, because then we can trace the source of that problem. Could you? I've got a few questions, but I'll go through them one by one if that's okay.
Yeah, I would agree with you that there is a retention time between rainfall and how that links into the samples that we might take as part of the compliance programme, and that has been a complexity for us over the years. We do run a forecasting tool, pollution risk forecasting, whereby we can use inputs such as rainfall to try and make an estimate of how that will be, how that will manifest itself in terms of bathing water quality. What I can say is the one at South Bay in particular, we've stopped using it because it's so poor at predicting. Because there isn't a good linkage, a well-known linkage between rainfall that we can then pick up with the bacterial quality in the bay, which just suggests it's a complicated system. Some of those pollution risk forecasting tools work very well around the coast, but they don't at Scarborough South Bay. So in terms of rainfall, when we say things like yes, we get an increased marker after heavy rainfall, that won't be a specific linear regression with rainfall. It will be a general trend about the amount of rain that's been in the catchment previously, and that's as good as we've got at the moment.
You don't have any indications of the time lag between rainfall and the indicators markers showing up on the coast. And you mentioned the South Bay isn't a very good indicator. Does that mean that you have data for the North Bay, which is up to what you would consider okay?
It's probably best that I'll pull some reports off and send them to you, and then and get the technical specialist that deals with that, who's written the report, to give you a bit of a more detailed analysis, if that's okay.
Do you make it available to everybody?
Okay. And then we'll circulate it to councillors and publish it on the website.
Right. You mentioned static waters and the impact they can have on it. Specifically mentioned P-Zone Park, which does have runoff problems quite significantly. Now, I am aware there is a sluice gate on P-Zone Park, which goes towards a retention tank, but I'm also this is just general gossip and whatnot, that Yorkshire Water are reluctant to open it. So what we end up having is with a large rainfall incident, it all goes onto the road and then just goes straight into the sea. Is that true? And is there anything you can do to make Yorkshire Water, if that is the case, open that sluice gate so that it's treated water that goes instead of just everybody's birds and all the other stuff goes straight into it, the sea?
I suspect that's the Yorkshire Water stroke North Yorkshire Council question, Martin. Get you off the hook.
Yeah, we would need to speak to the asset owner as to why they operate their assets in the way that they do it. All I can tell you, it's not an Environment Agency asset, but we do recognise that Peazone Park has a good population of birds, etc.
The other thing is, you mentioned throughout your data collection that there are consistent markers of bird species. Now, what I want to know is, are you, because no matter where you look, if you look hard enough, you will find all sorts of markers. But what I'm really interested in is, how relevant are they to the questions that we face here? Yes, you may find DNA, bird DNA, and human and cow, so forth, but what's the relative levels of them? Or is that something you just are not in a position to make any comment on?
I think we've had that question earlier, and all I can give you is just kind of general strength of signal rather than a solid percentage that it's X% human, X% birds. We don't have that data, or the data's not strong enough to do that at the moment.
Given that's the case, and we see the different approaches by yourself and what the professor is doing, as a layperson, I'm inclined to think an average taken over a 10-12 day period, which is what he's actually doing, is a better indicator of the sources of pollution and therefore the direction we have to go in which to deal with that pollution. Would that be a fair assessment in your opinion?
Councillor Sharma, you're talking my language. I would love to have an unlimited budget to do as much sampling as we could possibly do, but resources is a constraint for us in terms of the number of samples that we can do. I think people have mentioned. I think Steve mentioned as well. We take one sample a week. If you think about it, that's us filling a bottle for what, 5 seconds that represents all the water quality for that particular week. Could that be better? Yes, it certainly could. But that's what we're guided to do by the regulations at the moment, and that's why we're doing the additional investigations and working with the partners in the Bathing Water Partnership to try and get as much data as we can. Because if we went solely on the compliance data, we'd be almost guessing.
Need to stop you, Steve. I think you've had a fair shout. Yeah, more than a fair shout. Eric.
Thank you, Chair. One question, really point of information just on the Peazone Park. I think when Yorkshire Water first, when they put the retention tanks in around the Marine Drive, is it 10, 15 years, they were aware of the flooding around Peazone Park, and they looked at the sewage pipe, and it was too small to take the water from Peazone Park on a really heavy rain day. They couldn't afford to renew it, so that's one of the reasons why we have the floods down there. The pipe under that road is too small. The question really is that I don't know if you're aware that and this today we've been pinpointed or indicated that the problem lies on the north side, which is a light which hopefully we will study a little more in depth. But are you aware that I'm doing some more deep diving now? The Scarborough Mills pub, not so much the pub, but the Scarborough Mills. Originally, there were 4 mills from the Beck. We're talking about the Beck. From Scarborough Mills pub up to Scarborough Village, there were 4 working mills going back to the 1800s, grinding corn. And the point I'm trying to get at really is the agricultural runoff. Each of those mills had working wheels, and they were powered by water from the fields, and a lot of those pipes, the old pipes, as Councillor Bassman mentioned earlier on, some are still there. So I'm just wondering, have you looked at some of these? Have you had a look up Scarborough Mills at these culverts? And I know the old Youth Hostel Association, which is still there, where the 165 goes over the bridge. But in front of that, there was another mill, and that was demolished around about 1902 or 3. But that was a large house with a wheel. I mean, the foundations are still there. If you go up down the back, which we're not allowed, because it's short of property, but people do go down there, and also the one near Scarborough Village, there was a mill up there. So there were 4 working mills, but my point is, each of those mills were powered by water from fields to give the wheels a better chance of turning. I just wondered if you were aware of that. Thank you.
So I wasn't aware of that of that history, but we do have those continuous monitors in at Scarborough. So I will I'll make a note of the fact that it's been raised that there could be field drainage coming in through those historical assets, and we'll factor that in. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Janet, last question, I think.
I always mention this. The flow of water when we get flash floods. I live in the main street, I have a business in the main street, and you can't control it. I mean, one year we had more intricate detail at one time of bathing water quality when we had separate meetings, you know. And one of them we failed because in August, one particular year, we had this terrible flash flood. It flooded the bottom of Eastborough. Where did the water go? Presumed straight into the sea. Also, I've asked this question before. When we were potentially going to flood the foreshore or the sand side, I was always told, make sure you ring to get the valve opened on Aquarian Top. And I bring this up time and time again. It's probably Yorkshire Water. We don't seem to release that valve now. Is that because we don't want that pollutant water, say, from the valley to go direct into the sea? Because otherwise it just floods the street. So we've got a difficult problem there by not opening it and opening it. Do you follow me? And so is there any question about that? Does that involve, I know it's involved a particular year, and I can't remember whether it's 2017 or 18, where we had intricate details, whereas our readings were all good until we'd had 2 flash floods. So I'm just, to me, that's a big bearing on it. The drains can't take it. You know, if you had a drain every 10 feet, you would counteract the speed which the water came down, and it's climate change as well. So that's one of the big things that I get concerned about, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have an asset at Aquarian Top, but I think, yeah, if we could carry that question over for
Yorkshire Water.
Yeah, or the council if it's their asset. But
okay, we'll do that. Thank you. Thank you. No further questions. Thank you both for attending. Although Martin did the heavy lifting, I noticed. I've picked up 2 specific recommendations. One is that we loop you into our goal strategy so that you can understand any impact that might have on bathing water quality, or indeed how it might improve bathing water quality, actually. And secondly, back to Eric's point, that we talk to the council and yourselves about potential leach from landfill sites, either former or current, and making sure that all, and I know he's concerned about Carl Wasbeck because that's his division, but that all landfill sites are properly insulated and do not allow a lot of leach. I know there's always some leach, a bit like septic tanks, there's always a little bit of leach. Is that about right, really? Again, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you. Right, we're now on to the presentation from Yorkshire Water. I have 3 public questions. Could I ask Cathy Foreman, Alicia Black and Tom Blacklock to sit in these seats along my right? And could I ask Yorkshire Water to sit at the end there so I can eyeball you? Thank you very much. We are running behind schedule. I did predict that, Steve, didn't I, when I said I was a bit lenient in the morning earlier on. But I do think it's been worthwhile discussion, and I am, as you know, marking down recommendations as we go along. So, without further ado, if somebody, yeah, right, okay, can I ask for the questions in the order that they are on my papers, please? And do you want to take all the questions and answer them collectively or individually?
We'll shake it up and do them individually.
Ooh, like a change then. So first of all, Cathy Foreman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I am one of the co-directors of the Three Pool campaign, but today I'm representing the Huxley swimmers. We're one of many swimming groups who are actively swimming in Scarborough, and we organise regular swims multiple times a week, depending on conditions. We do want to get happily assist with multi-water quality testing, so bear that in mind as well for all the regular swimmers. But we do get alerts from the CSOs and spillages by the Safer Seas and Rivers App. We're very concerned about all the CSOs, but especially at times when the weather is dry, we've been told that sometimes monitoring equipment can cause errors if there is dust, dirt or spiders' webs on the sensors. So how accurate is the information about the CSOs, and how can Yorkshire Water improve the sensors or fix faults with them? Or is the information about dust, dirt and spiders' webs just a web of deceit?
Okay, I can pick that up. So nice to meet you. My name is Adam Ashman. I work at Yorkshire Water. So we've got sensors in storm overflows. They're called event duration monitors, EDM monitors. They work in quite a hostile environment. You know, they're buried underground. There is lots of contaminants, dust and spiders webs that do cause blips. So on the real-time overflow map that we have, you do sometimes see it looks like there's been a spill or a discharge that's lasted just a moment, like instantaneous, and they are generally fake. That's an anomaly within the data. So we're working to make them more reliable. The overflow information is a good indicator of if there's been a storm overflow operate. But yeah, we're aware that that is not the panacea of bathing water quality monitoring, and it'd be fantastic if we could get to a point where there was a more real-time view of actual bathing water quality. You can jump in, yeah.
Just to add that, afternoon, I think it's afternoon now. My name's Miles Cameron from Yorkshire Water. Just to add to Adam's point, we're measured on the availability of those monitors as well through the agency. We have to provide assurance that they're available 100% of the time. So it's in our interest, of course, as part of the permit that they are. As Adam said, I think there's more work done to make sure that they're available all the time. Some of those assets are in highways and byways. They need lane closures. We've had a problem, for example, with something called Holbeck Hill. So recently, that's an overflow that the cage said it's spilling. We know that's anomalous. And to your point, they shouldn't be spilling in dry weather. But that's the sort of thing we've got to rule out to give, obviously, the public, customers, trust and confidence that they're genuine sound. So you're right to call it out. We're absolutely measured on availability. They should be 100% of the time. But thank you for raising it.
Thank you. Question from Alicia Black.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, will Yorkshire Water fund independent testing on behalf of the various stakeholders in terms of the sea bathers, swimmers, surfers, and also we've got, as Cathy said, there's the proposed tidal sea pool, which will be an asset to Scarborough, and that's to encourage people to swim safely. And clearly, if the water is an issue, then you can forget the whole concept of a tidal pool if we can't, not necessarily guarantee all year round, but have some semblance of. And the question has been really prompted by two issues. One is trust in everything that we hear. We've even heard this morning that there's conflict between what EA said about guano and what the professor has said. So it's, and that's at a detail. I think the general sentiment is that, well, is everybody being transparent? There is opacity. There's many different organizations involved, so it's easy to sort of pass the buck, whether it's on whatever the cause is, but also where the responsibility lies. So that's an emotive issue. It's one of trust. So we would like to just satisfy ourselves somewhere that what we're being told is, well, as accurate as it can be. I mean, we're not even asking for really about citizen science, but it's more about, well, can we just see for ourselves exactly what is going on in sort of real time? And that real time is important because the second point is about, well, the EA's testing regime, which has been questioned on a number of levels, and not least of which is the fact that it's only carried out X number of times a year, and that's at a certain time of the year. And then whether we can begin to get, if it is carried out, which there is, but again, just going back to the trust thing, we've been advised that, well, yes, things are going to be happening, money is going to be spent, but these are promises that we've had in the past. So how can we really trust these things? So this is just in some small way getting our own very personal involvement into obviously a massive and complicated issue. That really, yeah, that's it. So we've come to Yorkshire Water because you're a private, for good or for bad, organisation, because we think it would be pointless asking the EA to fund it because they don't have enough funding themselves. So, so in some way, it's also a sort of a sponsorship on your behalf of a Scarborough asset that is sadly becoming a problem rather than a benefit to the town.
Right, thank you for your question. Who's picking that one? Oh, we should switch it off, Felicity. Thank you.
There we go. Perfect. Yeah, I'll answer that one. And I think right at the start of the session, Steve talked about what's important is the quality of the bathing water, and we talk about trying to understand the problems, and what we really need to get to is how do we make the bathing water better. Part of that is making it visible, and I think it's the tests that we use. I've got a lot of confidence in the science that they've talked about today, both Professor Grock and the EA. A huge amount of effort's gone into to help understand where those causes are coming from, but it still doesn't tell us what the bathing water quality is like today. So when I come in the summer with the kids, is it good or not? I think the technology is not quite there yet in terms of being able to do a very quick and accurate assessment of the bathing water quality. But that said, it would be fantastic to work on implementing a solution through the partnership, working with yourselves, to find a way to monitor the bathing water quality, make that data available to people so that they're, I don't know how you do this, but almost so that it's there on the sign. When I was on holiday last year, they had the samples were being written on the sign. Low technology, but really big impact. You could see what the bathing water quality was. So yeah, if we could find a way to do that, we would definitely support that. We tend to work through the partnership, so the organisations come together, and the reason for that is there's more bathing waters than just Scarborough. So if it can work here and we can provide accurate information, it'd be great to share that work across other bathing waters. So we can pick that up.
Thank you. Afterwards. Yes, Miles.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add, when we go through the presentation there might be some reassurance, hopefully, around some projects we're doing, particularly Martin alluded to the SONS in Scarborough. There's another instrument there which is a 2-year plan, and the idea, to Adam's point, is that we start using technology that then converts that into what does that mean for water quality bathing, and you're getting what we call near or real time, not 5 days, 10 days later. So there's some work, and we're happy to share that with water users. That's part of the plan.
Thank you. I've got Did you have a follow-up, Alicia, or are you happy with that answer? That's great. I've got a question from Tim, but I suspect Elizabeth's asking it. Am I right? Okay.
Okay. Whilst bonus payments were banned in 2025, these payments are still being made in disguised ways. For example, through parent companies or as retention payments. These are still bonuses. How can the public trust Yorkshire Water when massive amounts of money are paid out of the company rather than being used to lower bills and clean our water.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that the payments that are being referred to are not performance-related payments. That's payments that were made to our chief executive by the shareholders, and that's the decision that they took based on work that was undertaken directly for them, and it wouldn't be right for our customers to pay for that through their bills. You know, we as a company, and Miles and I, we understand the need for transparency, and so where things like decisions like that are made, we're working hard to ensure there is transparency around that, so people can understand what and why things have been done.
Have you got a follow-up to that, Elizabeth? You don't have to. You just take it as it's said. Miles, can I just check back with you in response to Lisa's question? You said that the Sundays in Scarborough Bet will be up in, no, mine stays on all the time. I talk as much as I like and do. That the Sundays in Scarborough Bet will be available for real time in 2 years. Is that correct?
The study is over 2 years. In addition to the work that Martin's described, this study will be over 2 years. I've discussed this with Steve as well, that we'll make that information available, and part of the stakeholder group's been referred to, so it gives confidence, and we learn together.
So that will be made available to the stakeholder group in real time. And the stakeholder group is not the Baby Water Partnership, it's what you're going to come on to talk about.
Come on to talk about.
Fabulous.
And
that is a seamless link into your presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the questions, and we're obviously not running away afterwards, so if there's any follow-up, we can chat outside as well. Yeah, we've heard, as we've gone through this morning, about the multiple sources of pollution that impact or that can and do actually impact the bathing water quality at Scarborough.
I'm really sorry, I'm struggling a bit. Could you just put the mic a bit nearer you?
Sorry,
that's better for me. I don't know. I'm better for others as well.
Okay, I can hear myself coming back now.
I'm sorry.
I've been encouraged by the background levels of performance, and there's been discussion about how there has been improvements over the last couple of years, particularly at South Bay. The previous investments that we've delivered have had an impact, but there are still times when bathing water quality is poor, and that's where we need to step into these other causes of bathing water quality. If you think back to prior to the 1990s, there was no sewage treatment at Scarborough. There was a discharge through a short sea outfall, and all of the infrastructure was as laid by the Victorians. Since then, we've invested. Yorkshire Water has created the sewage treatment works on the hill. There's a whole series of interceptor tunnels and pumping stations that transfer the sewage up to the works, and most recently the period that Steve, I think, was referencing was between 2010 and 2015, when the big investment went in along Marine Drive, so more storage tunnels, more treatment capacity up at the works, a longer outfall, and then the UV disinfection, which is there to kill the bacteria that's in the effluent that gets discharged. And that has worked. So, when we look at the bathing water quality, we've seen really good performance for North Bay in particular over that time. Obviously, there's been something happening in the last 2 years. There is more at play, and we've talked about the additional sources. We know that Scarborough Beck has been identified as a source of pollution and a source of the bacteria. We've talked about a number of impacts and the fact that we all need to work together to address those. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the work we've been doing over the last couple of months off the back of the work that was presented at the last summit, really focused on how to address any issues in Scarborough Beck. What we also have, and it's been referred to a number of times today, is the investment in the storm overflows, and Martin directly referred to that, and that's going to take place in the next couple of years.
We don't have an awful lot of detail to share today about that, but we've been engaging with groups, and we're, everyone within Scarborough is welcome to have an input to that. And we will be going out for proper consultation in April, where people can see the types of features that we'll be creating to further improve things. So I'll hand over to Miles, and we'll go through some of the agenda slides and then do more questions.
Thanks, Adam. Could everyone hear me okay on the microphone? I'll bring it a little bit closer. St. John, if we can move to the first agenda slide. So lots on there. That's just bullets what we're going to cover off. So if we go to the next slide, please, St. John, I'm conscious of time. Thank you. So the first thing to say, I think this hopefully is, I know we talk about trust is easily lost and takes a lot of time to earn. The first thing is we've created a bathing water team. So last year, and I'll lead that team. And yeah, he says 8 resources behind it. But the important thing is that absolutely our focus is the 21 bathing beaches we've got across Yorkshire, but in particular Scarborough. So a lot of focus of my team, a mixture of experts, scientists and managers and experts who can support and help drive, as Adam described, those investigation work as part of the partnership. So I'm really proud of the team, and I'm hoping over the coming days, weeks, months, years, you will get to meet them. They're an integral part, and it's about breaking down some of those myths, or at least improving on the transparency I know many of you really crave. So I'm really pleased about that, but I wanted to just highlight that we have now got a dedicated team who will be out working in communities going forward. Thanks, St. So one of the things we do as well, we talk about our assets, and clearly everyone's concerned, and rightly so, to make sure that we are held to account. Adam referred to it, and I think maybe Martin alluded to, we have had digital investment in the previous, what we call the 5-year period, is an asset management period. So Wheatcroft, we referenced McCain, we know that McCain's invested in their assets. Equally at Wheatcroft, we invested in putting in a significant amount of storage that reduced those spills. That's what's coming in the future and the next few years in Scarborough to a number of further assets, but 2.5 million, and we have seen the impact of that route in reducing discharges. Again, I know for many in the room, it feels too little too late. It's coming. There'll be some significant investment. We know that looking at Wheatcroft, it's made a big difference and reduced the amount of overflows and that asset operates. Similarly, at Whitby Road Bridge, we've just finished commissioning the asset there. That goes out into Jackson Bay. Again, that's being fully commissioned again. Additional storage, holding back those flows, making sure it all gets fully treated. And again, we have the data to start showing that is paying dividend. The other activity, the reason we created a bathing water team is, we're not an operational function. We hold our operational colleagues to account. So I'll work with my team to make sure any operational and maintenance activities are done. I know a number of maybe referenced about assets on Scarborough Beck. Part of my role is to make sure that we do cleanse, we maintain, we fix, doing the basics right, basically. And that's part of my job. And we're doing that right now. And again, you heard both Stuart and Martin talk about the collaboration piece. Part of the partnership is we work together. The power of the partnership is the really powerful thing here. For example, misconnections are referenced. That's where everyone plays their part. So I've identified a number of misconnected properties, maybe new development, maybe otherwise. The power of using the environmental health, the EA and Yorkshire Water's power together is where we really start to get results. So that's where I think we're really going to be focusing our efforts, particularly in those areas where we've got Scarborough Beck identified by both Professor Grock and the EA's investigation. That's really powerful. And that's where you show the strength of working together. You heard Adam talk about disinfection of UV. So that's for the uninitiated. Effectively, you could simply call it a light on the end of a pipe. It's a little more sophisticated than that. But that is put at the back end, is what's called tertiary treatment, and kills those bacteria and kills the bacteria. Again, it's permitted by the agencies to make sure that it's available. And part of my job is to make sure that we monitor that on a daily basis, that the lamps that do that are available. Again, we make sure that that is 100% available all the way throughout the season. Again, to give reassurance. Next slide, please, St. John. So again, data, piece at the top, we're just going to throw lots of numbers at everyone because I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. What we have seen is an improvement in spills and the duration of those spills across the assets. And for us, albeit people may not believe the data, they are from the event duration monitors. We provide this information. It is publicly available on the website, Yorkshire Water website as well. So it's freely available for those that want to look at it. And we have seen an improvement year on year. Yes, you'll acknowledge that it was a dry year in 2025. That's acknowledged. But the whole idea of the investment, we drive those spills down. And when I come to talk about the investment, you'll see the difference it really can make. We know we've said it's a complex thing, bathing water quality. We know our assets have a part to play, and that's what I'm pleased to see. We've seen the improvement. We've seen how Wheatcroft has reduced the amount of its bills. We want all our assets to do the same, and that's exactly what we're planning to do. And as I said, the dedicated team that I oversee, that's our raison d'etre, is to focus and support the business on driving that performance. Thanks, St John. This is a really positive piece, and hopefully, and the number of groups, as Adam said, we're happy to stay around after and talk to you. We're doing an awful lot on the education engagement side. So we can talk about the hard assets, the pumps, the tanks, which is all incredibly important, of course. But we're doing an awful lot, hopefully, in the community with local schools. So we have an ongoing education programme, just some stats on the left. We're presented to over 3,500 primary students, 32 secondary students, a number of adults, and visited 46 schools. That will only ramp up and continue over the next 4 years in Scarborough. We think, and I think you probably agree, we think that's really important. Broader conversations around water safety, which has been brought up. We use things like Lego coding, SUDS for the initiative, that's sustainable urban drainage, even the likes of water butts and how they can help and look at managing the flow into the network, how we can manage water resources. And the engagement we've had has been second to none. So I have one of my colleagues, Steve Parsley, he's our education advisor. He goes into schools. We're working with the local education authorities to make sure we're hitting the mark and we're providing materials. And again, doing that in collaboration with the partnership is really powerful and really strong. In terms of stakeholder meetings, as I said, I know we meet with Steve periodically and with Freddie. I'm keen to do that. That's part of my day job. And that, again, hopefully is to build trust, transparency, whether it's discussing data, what we're doing in the community, that will go on. There's an ongoing commitment from Yorkshire Water to do that. We're also working with the tourism and hospitality. We heard from friends at the Sea Life Centre today. Conversations with those organisations will continue. And we're certainly looking proactively to be involved in more community events. Scarborough 400 has been referenced numerous times. Again, happy to be involved to support that. I think it'd be a fantastic springboard for the town and some of the investments to come, hopefully the next couple of years. So more than happy to support that. And if people have ideas, please do approach us. Thanks, St John. So the investment, as I said earlier, also the details are a bit scant, but Martin highlighted, so there's a number of assets that we are driving investment for and will be delivering over the next 4 years. There are a number of overflows and treatment works, and Adam referred to the treatment works up on the hill. So these sites will be getting significant refurbishment and upgrade over the next 4 years. Anything up to £150 million, which is a significant sum. I know we've got inflation, but if you think on the East Coast, and again, I know trust is being challenged around the ability to deliver. That was 110 million 10 years. So this is 120 to 150 million just in one town in Scarborough. So it's a significant investment and we must get it right. And I think everyone agrees that we must get that right. So lots of engagement over the coming months. You'll see that. You'll see Yorkshire Water present in the community as well. My team and Lindsay, who's in here with me today, working very, very hard to make sure that people feel and do see a presence and I can ask questions and be available. So we're developing a timetable for engagement and consultation. It isn't a one-size-fits-all. Some of you may have seen we've already started. So only a small scale, but they're looking at water butts in the community on domestic properties. You say, well, what's that got to do with anything? That's about taking some of the strain off the network, dealing with a local, maybe a localised flooding if we can. I've got a nibbling effect, I want to call it, for want of a better word. But it's also about customers and they can play their part as well. So it's really important that we do that. And the idea, if you see the bottom point there, which I think has been referenced by a number of people in this room, it's about legacy, the education, the skills. We're bringing a sizable workforce to Scarborough. That's got to be a fantastic thing for the local economy, hopefully, and for the regeneration of the town. So we want to be part of that. Thanks, St John. This is referenced a few times. I think Professor Grott referenced it as well, and Martin. One of the things that's been really good the last couple of years been able to do is use other technologies and innovation to look at what we can do in Scarborough. We've talked about being complicated and that we can keep saying that, but we need to try and crack it. One of the things we have done, and on the back of the intelligence around Scarborough, we've been doing some aerial mapping. So using surveys, which believe it or not, the technology now is incredible, you can get very high definition imagery. And in doing that, it's identified where we've got the potential for misconnections, where there might be issues with drainage or staining on the land where there is runoff from farmland, which I know was discussed at the previous conversation with Martin and Mike. And as a consequence of that, that intelligence is being shared with both North Yorkshire and with the EA. And again, as a partnership, we can go after that. So we're doing very much that with pre-season for Scarborough in particular. I touched on the water bot initiative, 2,500 units to be deployed over the coming months, which is fantastic, hopefully for customers as well, and that is likely to grow. And last but not least, the partnership work itself, as I say, is all around us working together. Because when you think about enforcement of the power of the collective, it's those three large agencies who can really start to make a difference. Thanks, St. John. So innovation, so Seagrown were referenced earlier on. We're partnering with Seagrown. Someone referenced the aquaculture. This is the growing market, I guess, or technology. And the idea of not just about nutrients, but also mopping up any bacteria risks. I know we want to treat the root cause, of course, that's vitally important. But I'm fascinated by this technology. So they tried it as a blue solution, and we're working with Laura and Wave at Seagrown on exactly that. So a unit in Caton Bay and then a unit in North Bay, and you'll start to see a presence. And I was intrigued, I think, the conversation that Professor Grock raised around the idea of what do you do with the material afterwards. The whole idea to be a circular economy. So if you get fishermen involved, or the fishing community, is there another way, another outlet? So all that will be explored. I'm certainly happy to come back and share the outputs of that trial as that develops. It's starting in earnest now. It's small scale, but it's a proof of concept. I think a lot of people will be interested in the where we go with that. The bottom point is the point I made earlier, innovation monitoring. This is the holy grail that everyone's trying to achieve. So rather than samples going up to the lab, growing bacteria, that delay, the industry as a whole are looking at what technologies are out there and can we be smarter at getting data that informs all water users. Is it safe to bathe? Can I put my children, I'm happy to paddleboard, surf, and that's exactly what this trial aims to do. It's an off-water innovation being funded by the economic regulator, and we were successful in getting that trial. We've got 20 units across the region in Yorkshire. We have one just downstream of Hillcrest in Scarborough, and again, we're aligning that with what the EA are doing. But that data, as I said, once we get the dashboard up and running, we're willing to share that, understand what it means. In addition to back to samples, we'll run these samples and start to correlate and understand, does that give us much better insight on water quality? And at that point, hopefully have a product. And you can see the imagery there, and apologies if it's not very clear. The idea is to have something in the palm of your hand, on your phone. Could you go that day to the beach and say, is it safe to bathe? That's the holy grail. That's what we're trying to get to, and that's part of that trial. Thanks, St. John. So last but not least, and I can let you guys rest from my dulcet tones. Bathing Water Partnership. So again, a number of people have referenced this morning in the summit. This isn't necessarily a substitute for that, but the idea is we move to a much more inclusive partnership. We've referenced Steve and others feeling somewhat excluded at times. We have inclined to agree this trust that's important for everyone, transparency, is supported by the partnership. And as part of that partnership, we already have what we call a tactical group. Principally, the agency, Yorkshire Water, will meet up. We do meet with councillors across the region, but bringing in this partnership, which will include a new stakeholder group, which will bring in water users, swimming groups. That's what we want to see set up this year. We're looking for an independent chair, by the way, if anybody is interested. That's the one thing we do need. We want it to be a truly independent group that has a voice, but also has access to data and can challenge at times. That is going to be set up this year. So happy to talk to those about that. And the final point of there, we are looking to appoint a new independent chair for a bathing water board. Again, I stress independent, not a Yorkshire Water chief exec, for example, but to show the importance of bathing water. We know how important it is for the local economy, but that should be coming soon. And again, happy to share that any subsequent committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I have got shed loads of questions. I'm probably going to steal everyone else's question. So I'll do a few first, but I've got David and Rich. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Ash, Roberta. We should be done by then. Do you need to leave now to get to it? Okay, have you got a question that you want to take first? Okay, lovely, thank you. Right, so I'll start at the bottom, which is the newly stakeholder group. I'm aware that you've spoken to Scarborough Tourism Board, and indeed, I think I might be looking at two people who might be going on said stakeholder group. What is the process for nomination onto that, and how do we make sure we get all the right people, the right residents who are vocal on this, please?
Regularly, in terms of a process of filtering or a process of application, I think it's in our interest to make sure we get out to those communities over the coming weeks. We have done some amount of stakeholder engagement and mapping to make sure we've got those communities. But what I would suggest within my team and as part of the partnership, we'll do that mapping, circulate that perhaps as part of this, who we have spoken to, and I really welcome people filling in the blanks where you think there are other water users, interested groups who would like to have a voice in this stakeholder group. Okay. So it's almost turn it around on itself and say, this is where we've got to. We believe these are the interested parties, but over the coming months it'd be great to have that set up. But I would stress we are looking for an independent chair and we'd welcome anybody who would support themselves forward.
Okay, thank you. Somebody mentioned earlier on, and I'm just curious because I'm sure it's true. I live in a Victorian house. So what percentage of the network is truly narrow Victorian pipes? And if it's something you need to get back to me on, that's fine.
Yeah, so we don't have I haven't got an exact breakdown on that. We've got an asset record that records the details of the date when it came into our ownership. We can try, but and then give an estimate. But I would say if it is a Victorian house, it will have a Victorian drain.
But when you were doing the water books, presumably that was around that sort of geography.
Yeah,
the old centre of town.
So when we look, we're looking for the level of connected drainage. So whether it's a combined system or a separate system when we're doing the water butts. So we're looking to say, does the roof runoff connect with the sink waste? In which case, a water butt wouldn't be suitable, or are they two separate systems at that point?
All right, thank you. And I should know the answer to this question because I attended Wheatcroft and a fantastic new with colleagues and Rich. But is that storing treated or untreated sewage?
So the storage at Wheatcroft is for a combined system. So it's rainwater and sewage mixed together. So what we've done there is we create extra capacity so that we can store more of that flush, capture that, and then send it back for treatment. Since that's been commissioned across this last, across this last period, so we've managed to operate that, and there hasn't been a discharge. During the commissioning period, there was a bit of an instrument blip, but other than that, it's operated really well.
Yeah, I clocked you said that. So when you're talking about your 5 new CSOs, will they be a mixture of rainwater and sewage again, and then they're pumped up to Scarborough for treating? Is that right?
So that's to be determined how we actually solve the problem. So you can solve the problem by storing the water, or you can separate the water out, and so it doesn't become contaminated. So the different approaches we're going through. Miles mentioned sustainable urban drainage. Part of what we want to understand when we do properly go out and consult is what would the other uses be, and how can we use it for something that provides that's better than just mixing it in with sewage and then having to treat it.
Okay, so one of the recommendations I think I'm looking for from us guys is that when we do our local plan, we look at sustainable urban drainage, so we are not unnecessarily putting rainwater into a system to be treated. But that's okay. I'm nearly there. Missed connections. So I always thought missed connections were older properties who'd been wired up wrong, but they're not, are they? They can be anywhere and anything. So could you just talk a bit around sort of missed connections we've had?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They can be anywhere and anything. So you can, I guess, a typical example might be a more modern property that's got a rainwater pipe and a separate sewer pipe, and when you make some modifications and you plumb your sink waste or your washing machine in, it just goes into the rainwater pipe in error. And very often people aren't even aware because you don't see the impact of that. The tool that Miles described, where we use aerial photography to find and then identify those properties, very often we go and you explain that to the person, and a simple bit of work and the problem goes away. So yeah, that's the type of misconnection we're normally dealing with.
Okay, thank you. And I have spoken to Lindsay at length about the works that you're going to do. Will they be done by 2030? It sounds like, for instance, I know we talked about the CSOs, but do you propose new treatment works? Have you got sites? Do you need to go through the labyrinth of North Yorkshire planning? And will 2030 be realistic?
So
will 2030 be realistic? Is a good question. So we're working hard to get to 2030 and deliver the work by 2030. Will we do it by then? We'll find out soon, because by the end of this summer we'll have the detailed plans, and if there's not enough time for that, we will go back round the route and discuss that with our regulators to understand, is there any flexibility on timescales. We want to make sure that the solution that we deliver achieves our driver, which has been set by the regulators, but also has a positive impact on the bathing water quality. So it goes beyond just storing storm overflow water. We really are looking at what's the right solution for Scarborough. How do we spend that money in the best way to get the maximum benefit? Yeah, I guess we don't have. We may require things like land that we don't have now. There may be a need for planning. We'll have to work through all of those processes to get to a point where we can deliver those outputs. What I would say is we're not waiting for all of that to start. So the things like cross connections that you've raised, or the surface water separation, things like that are only going to have a positive impact. So we're already starting to do that work now to make sure that there is a benefit delivered.
Okay, thank you. And as I said earlier, you are regular visitors to the area committee. So when you've programmed your work, you can let us know. Thank you. Right, I've got questions from David, Rich, Subash and Roberta. David.
Two questions, really. Given the increased requirements for development in North Yorkshire, and we're talking about 4,000 houses plus a year, are you confident that your infrastructure can cope with that? And also, just personal one, does Yorkshire Water sell sewage slurry to farmers?
So with regard to development, I think it does depend on the specific location. So some sewerage systems have capacity, some perhaps don't. There's a number of ways that we monitor capacity, and we look at things like the number of storm overflow operations, and there's triggers and targets that we monitor, but we also monitor flows through our treatment works. So it can be a complex situation based on, and it can be different at different points within a very local network. When I think it was mentioned earlier, we're not a statutory consultee. We do try and respond to planning applications where we feel there is going to be an impact on our network, and in those instances, we would work to request conditions that would allow us to upgrade our network. So very much we look to say, how can we accommodate the development, and if that means increasing capacity, then we'll program that in. Some of that may already be within the plan. Some of it we may have to work to bring into the plan. But yeah, having a sort of a published local plan with all of the details in, that allows us to align our investments with those published within the local plan. I'm sorry.
Just to build on Adam's point, the other part was that the design horizon, notwithstanding not being a statutory consultancy, will be 2050. So it will try and incorporate the local plan where it can to understand, to your point, development. So it is factored in. However, we're not a statutory consultancy, as I think's been referenced a few times. Thank you.
On the second question, is that okay? Yeah, go for that one. So I'm not so sure that we sell sewage sludge, but I know that we do provide it to farmers. It goes through something called a biosolids assurance scheme, where it has to be treated. It gets treated through an anaerobic digester, and then there's testing to understand that the pathogen kills has reached a certain limit before that can then be sent out to agriculture. I also don't know how much of that happens in this area, so we don't have an anaerobic digester here. Our sludges from here get sent to other treatment centres in Hull or York, but that could be, we can absolutely get some details for you and respond on that.
Thank you. Can I ask a daft question? Who do we ask to make you a statutory consultee? Is it a government thing?
Yeah, it might well be.
And I think my growing list of recommendations. Joe, did you want to say something? Okay. Thank you. Rich.
Thank you, Chair. The Yorkshire Water reps have acknowledged that there's a trust and confidence issue, and that residents will believe that it's too little, too late. And the gallery that are allowed in today are normally outside, actually, with their placards and the drums, because the town is irate. The key fact is that South Bay is still classified as poor. It puts public health at risk. There's environmental damage, and it harms our town's reputation. And to me, state regulation of the water industry, that's failed us. There's ongoing sewage discharges to prove it. The key questions that I wanted to ask today, why is this still happening? It's a simple question. People want to understand it, but all I've heard today is that it's complicated. And who is responsible? Well, I've got the Environment Agency saying one thing, perhaps it's guano. I've got a professor sat behind me telling me, no, it's sewage. So who is responsible? Still not clear, I'm afraid. And then finally, I've just heard, what is the timeline for real improvements on 150 million pounds that's going to be spent of our money? And now I'm heard there's got to be some flexibility potentially on the timescales. So, you know, it's great that we've had this today. It has certainly not got to be an end to it. I have spoke before the meeting to Adam and alluded to the fact that I will be presenting something along the lines of a pilot study, working closely with Colin Dent of Morleda Tech, and I'm sure our MP will nod an improvement to that because she's met with him already. Dr. Claire Wright at York St John University and other partners. I'll be talking about that later. But after this pilot study, I would be very interested to seek acknowledgement from Yorkshire Water that they will look into this study as something that could work with previous studies and perhaps look to supporting it, because that is how you gain the trust. When citizens are involved in the science and the data collection, and they can actually see how these things work, it flows in the opposite direction. You'll start to win the trust of us all, and you'll gain our confidence, and we'll start to understand why it is that we're paying more on our water base. Thank you.
You don't have to respond if there isn't a response.
Oh, I've always got something to say.
Worse than me, go on.
I think it's a great idea, and you know, I completely agree. If you know, we talked earlier on about how on earth do we make this data more visible to people, and what better way than having the people who use the sea involved in collecting the information. So yeah, we'd love to be involved with that. I want to clarify, when 2030 it feels a long way away to me, and there could be a whole lot of things go wrong. That's the date we're going to have delivered the investment by, and that's the date when the improvements will have been secured. I'm expecting things to look better before then, though, because I know the amount of work that's going in from people all around this table to improve things here and now, and I'm really hopeful for the season ahead. So I guess, yeah, I'm sure we'll see an impact before then.
Can I just stress, though, I know we've talked about water quality in general and sewage, but in terms of bathing water quality, the only readings that matter are the ones that the EA submit. And that's really the issue. We can do as much citizen science as people are prepared to do, and for their own information and their own assurance, but our flags are driven by the EA's numbers. Okay, thank you. Subhash.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to confine myself to just two questions. The first one is not really my question, it's the surface and sewage made, which is, we were promised with the investment that went in that we would have the best water quality in Europe, not just in Britain. That obviously hasn't happened. And the question he wanted to put to you is, why has that happened? What, if some of it's been achieved, what's the gulf between what you achieved and what you set out to achieve? How big a gulf is that? What was the data that you collected that led to that problem happening in place? And how can we be sure that this time round with this new development and the new input that's going in, you've covered all the bases and that you're actually going to deal with the problem that exists and not a fictitious problem which has happened. The second question I have for you is the water butts issue. I feel this is part of my perception of Yorkshire Water. The cheapest possible action is taken, which has the biggest effect. And I believe this is an example of it. What I want to see is grey water recycling retrofitting. It has a long-term impact. It reduces the amount of water we need to save so we don't have shortages in the summer because we're using rainwater to do that. And it also means that you're not recycling the stuff twice, which is a saving in itself. But that requires you to put real money behind it to encourage people to do it. And I see nothing in your presentation that says you're going to go down that path. You're waiting presumably to have another reservoir somewhere, which will be millions of pounds that you can stick on our bills. So that's how the system works, unfortunately. We want to move away from highlighting catchy slogans like "Let's give everybody a water butt," which may be very, very cheap and very, very effective for getting that thing out to doing real, proper problem solving. Thank you.
So I guess the first thing I would say is I think it's right that we do take the best value action and the thing that will have the biggest impact first. So I think that's I think that's the right way to approach it, so that we're not implementing expensive solutions that may take time and may not deliver all of the benefit. So I wanted to make that point, and then I can go on further. I think there will be a whole range of investments needed because water butts are very useful for certain types of storm events. But when you look at the intensity and the duration of the storm events that we're seeing more and more of, and I know the impact of climate change on weather has been discussed, it's important that when we're designing for the 2050 time horizon, we take account of all of that. The best way to tackle that is through appropriate separation and recycling of water, as you've mentioned, is a good alternative use. So yeah, if there was a way of retrofitting recycling, that would be great. I think that's a bigger challenge than just Yorkshire Water. So, having that included within the design standards for new housing, as an example, would be, collective water recycling would be a more cost-effective way of implementing that. But I completely agree with the ethos and the approach there. What I would say on the investments that were delivered between 2010 and 2015, so they absolutely have had an impact. They've had a positive impact, and they've delivered big reductions in the bacteria loading from Yorkshire Water's assets. We disinfect all of the effluent, we disinfect all of the storm effluent. So that's a big positive impact. The investment that we're going to do next is about reducing the number of storm overflows. So storm overflows at the sites that were mentioned on the presentation, that's not disinfected. It contains an awful lot of rainwater and it contains the normal amount of sewage, but there's no disinfection. So by reducing the number of those storm overflows, that further reduces the impact of bacteria from our assets. What it won't do is fix all of the other sources. So we've talked today about what we talked about. We've talked about agriculture. We've talked about sand. We've talked about septic tanks and misconnections. That all needs doing as well. So the standard for achieving excellence is so tight that we can't take a risk on any of those. We've got to address it all, and then collectively, I think that's our work in this room. So we do that through the partnership. We don't leave anything unchecked. We have to go through and do them all. Yeah, hopefully that's answered.
One more.
You say you're going to reduce the amount of storm overflows. Do you have a figure by how much you're going to reduce it? Or is it a move to target as things get worse? But what can we look forward to? Will it be a third of what we have now? Will it be 10% of what we have? What's the figure?
Yeah, okay, so so this is all driven by the Environment Act. So the Environment Act stipulates that we have to achieve no more than 2 spills, so 2 overflow operations within a bathing season. So the bathing season runs from. Sorry.
Could you please refrain from speaking down?
Sorry, no more than 2 overflows within a bathing season, so from March to September, May to September, and then across the year, the target is 10 in total. So that's for each overflow that we have. So that's the target. The when is by 2030. So that's generally they are low in terms of numbers of operations. We can share the specific details with you from the EDM data. I think one of the slides was in there. I'm not sure if that was a total for them all.
Yes,
like an accumulative.
There's a combine on the slide for Scarborough. Yeah.
You share that data with the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, you've all asked similar to what I was going to, but I'm looking around the table. We are all very localised councillors. I think we're all looking for the same thing. I had written down quite a few things. Basically, how long is a piece of string? Really, we've been strung along for years and we don't seem to be getting there. I know 2030 is not that far away. It's 4 years then for all the town to have this rating. I know you're going to say, well, hopefully it'll improve. Yeah, hope to goodness it does. My first thought was, as David said, about the volume of houses that we are being asked to build per year. It has got to exasperate what we're looking at. I have got 4 sites within a small amount within a village. I'm asked to take probably in the long term 2,500 raw houses. We have 189 properties that from 12 years ago have not been signed over because of the state. We can't sign them over to us because of the state of the pipes, the drains. We've got tankers taking storage away. This can't be working. We have an old system, and Scarborough's the same. We talk about a Victorian system. This is what's happening. No, we're not replacing the infrastructure that's going to improve it. I know we're talking a lot of money, but I think long term, I don't know what the alternative can be. I can see all the agencies are working together, and that's obvious. But they've all got different sort of feedback to us this morning. These are the people where it matters. I'm hoping the chairman recommends this. I'm sure she will. You will. You will do. This extension of these months where we're testing, that needs to be extended without even thought. The funding will have to come from somewhere because we're an all year round place. We're surrounded. What about all these holiday parks? This coast is absolutely surrounded. What happens to their waste? So we're a massive increase, particularly at peak times. But what are peak times? Because these people are using the facilities all year round. I do think that needs extending this, just purely so we can get a record, not just of those major 4 months, but following on. I think it's for everyone out thinking in this room, it's very frustrating that this has gone on and on for years. And we don't seem, I know you're saying it's getting better in places. I would have liked to have seen a representative here today from McCain's. Yes, they put a lot of money in. But someone has said this morning that they're actually the effects of what they've done it is actually affecting the North Bay as well as the South Bay. So I think we're all very conscious there has to be a lot of investment. I know there has been, but I think it has to come faster. You know, I know you're doing all you can, but it's not quick enough. It's, you know, we need results. We need to be able to say, we don't want to be reading about Scarborough having put, we want to see Scarborough going up in these tables. It's one of the best resorts in the country. We need it. We need to be fighting for it. And I think that's what we're all here for today, really.
Before you answer, can I come back? Roberta, in terms of requesting the extension of the testing, we've already done that piece of work. We're waiting for DEFRA to come back. On the subject of McCain's, we chose not to invite them on the basis that we had the Bathing Water Summit had been assured of the work they'd done. A number of members had been to test it and the screening. I think it was a reference to the tidal patterns that moving things up. McCain's are regular supporters of the Bathing Water Quality Summit, so we can pick anything up there with them. We are well over time. If we'd had them here, I think we might be at afternoon tea by the time we finished. And then add them to the points that Roberta had made. Sorry, it's not a public meeting, Steve. I'm really sorry. No, no. No, I can't allow it. Steve, no, I'm sorry. I can't allow it because I've got other members of the public here and it's a slippery slope. So it is a meeting held in public. It is not a public meeting. If you want to message somebody here to ask that question, that if you've got somebody's phone number, that's absolutely fine. But no, I can't allow it. Please don't make me. Okay, thank you. Right, Adam.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we and I want to see the bathing water improve really quick as well. So just to sort of make that point clear, two things to just mention. So our wastewater treatment works and the infrastructure is sized to accommodate the peak capacity. So with all the tourists here, it can cope with that. We have and we treat it all year round. So we don't turn anything off over the winter periods. The usually disinfection is still on, the capacity is still there. So there isn't a lower standard that we operate to. It's the same high standard all year round. That and that standard is maintained. So I think Martin talked about the inspections that are done. Our sampling program shows that we achieve those standards. I just also wanted to mention something about some properties. It sounded like there were some properties built but not connected, and maybe not going through the development process. So there is a sewers for adoption approach where things have to be built by developers to a certain standard that meets that, and then it can be adopted. If there's a specific that we need to catch up on outside, then we should do that. Yeah, otherwise it wouldn't be progressing over to us.
Thank you. Eric.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly. And I'm sure you've been listening to all the comments and the worries and the concerns of members and everyone in the chamber. But we've been blessed recently with lovely fishes, dolphins coming into our gorgeous sea. I think all we're asking for really is if you possibly speed things up. Hopefully we're going to get it right. But it seems a long way away, 2030, doesn't it? And I know people are working very hard to speed things up, but that's just my final comment, really. Please try and speed things up. Thank you.
Yeah, I think agree. I think the main benefit will come from the activity that's being done now associated with Scarborough Beck and understanding some of the agricultural pollution and helping to address that and some of the cross connections. So yeah, I think we will go as fast as we can to get that done.
Thank you. And then final question, Janet Jefferson.
Agency. I was on about the flash floods that we get in certain times of the year, usually about August, and I know from previous ratings it did affect us, with what the result was at the end of the year. And there's also this query, and it's always talked about in the South Bay by the traders and everything. We have this valve on aquarium top. Now, we were always told that we had to release this valve if there was excess flooding, so it didn't flood all the properties, etc. And it would bring it down from the valley, because the valley floods as well. Now, to our best of our knowledge, this had never been open for years. And is it detrimental to open it? Are we putting more pollution in by allowing that? Or should it be open to relieve the sewers? And nobody can ever give us an answer.
Yeah, I think we'll have to take it away, Janet. I'm not aware of a valve that would stop flow getting in. But then there was also was it piezo? Yeah, there's another talk of one. So I think what we should do is look at those two specific things and just try and clarify exactly what the operational mode is. Is there a valve? Is there not a valve? Just so we can all be clear on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've noted 4 recommendations to my ever-growing list. One is that we recommend the local plans look at urban drainage systems and grey water. I think some of that may be captured, but it's worth checking because North Yorkshire is in an iteration of a new local plan, as you know. That we ask North Yorkshire Council to write to whoever about making water companies more widely statutory consultees, especially since we know the government's ambition for many more new houses. That Yorkshire Water, once they've got their programme of works and they get a clearer idea on the timeline, will come back to the area committee, and on that basis you're going to involve the area committee in nominating to your stakeholder group. And that's really helpful. I'd like to thank you both very much for coming. Thank you very much. Right, members, I am just going to, and I know I've just said those 4 recommendations, I'm just going to recap. So I'm going to recap the recommendations we've done as we've gone through the morning. If you want to object to any of them, please let me know. Otherwise, St John and I will, well, I'll send them to him. He'll make them look nice and wordsmith them and break them down into who those recommendations are directed at. So one of the most interesting ones for me today, thank you, Ross, was that we asked North Yorkshire to test the sand before we move it. That North Yorkshire Council asked Professor Grock to write a new proposal for further work. It's already on an extension, so it would be a new contract, and that would go to North Yorkshire Council. That we understand what happens when we clean our streets from seagull guano, just want to know. That we involve the Environment Agency in our thinking, and the paper written about the Gulf strategy and any potential impact on water quality might actually be related to what happens when we wash the floors, but there you go. Item 6, that we look at potential for leaks from landfill sites, both current and old, and retrofit if we need to understand the impact on the water with that. And then I'm back to the 4 that we talked about. So local plan, studs, grey water, update on programme of works, statutory consultee, and making sure that our stakeholder groups are as encompassing and representative of our communities as we can all make them. Guys, have I forgotten anything? Pardon? Janet, you need to put your mic on. It's all done. He's got his better.
We're waiting for them to come back. Okay, that's fine.
There's nothing we can do about that. So, in an unlikely turn of events, and I'm not really minded to do this because he did jump the gun a bit, I promised Rich Moore the last word. It's not like me at all. I usually like the last word. But if you've been at all interested in what we've talked about today, not just about the bathing water quality, but raising awareness of the quality of our coastal waters more generally, right across the piece, and you think that you have something to contribute, and I know that the Sea Hub and the Hub Swimmers have said that they would be willing to test. Rich has something to update us all on about a citizen science project.
Chair, yeah, it's the last few words. So I'm encouraged that we're in a position to move forward with a pilot study. It's working collaboratively with Colin Dent of Molendo Tech, Dr. Claire Wright at York St John's University, and partners including North Yorkshire Sport, Swim North East, and Outdoor Partnerships. And from my perspective as a local councillor, it's exactly the kind of practical, locally grounded research that has potentially been missing. And what makes this pilot different is that it uses a rapid testing technology. The sampler allows same-day detection of endotoxin levels, and this provides a real-time indicator, and we've alluded to that earlier on today, saying it's the thing that we're all hoping to achieve. Well, this is actually in studies. It's being used in other areas, and other water companies are already engaged with it. However, this is just a pilot study that I'm working to deliver at the moment. But the immediacy is crucial because regular sea users want to make decisions whether they want to go in the sea and enter it on that day. And this kit, you'll swim out, you'll take a sample, you take a pipette, you squeeze it in, and the machine is about handheld, and it takes 13 minutes to analyse. It comes out with a traffic lights system, red, yellow, green. Red, that particular sample would recommend you wouldn't use it. Yellow and green is that it didn't detect anything illicit. Now, I understand that you can take one sample and it will give one reading and another. The pilot study will take over 90 days. That will be done, like I say, in partnership with locals, with swimming groups, with surfers. These people will be able to take these samples and see immediately what's going on. There's an app that you will be able to put on your phone, and this little bit of kit actually gives the in-depth data to the app. So you're not just going on a red, yellow, green. You're actually going on some real data. The pilot study will roll out this summer, but what we're trying to do is look ahead to funding this as a proper piece of research. This would be with a PhD student at York St John's University. It would be in conjunction with citizen science helping to gain the data, but we would need lots of these sampler kits and lots of people taking the data. But ultimately, it would work alongside those things that we've heard from Professor Grog, alongside data from the EA. But what it really should do, and this is my last word, it will give trust in the process, because this isn't top down, it's actually people engaging the process, seeing the data and then having it analysed. So I would commend that once the pilot study is done for your consideration to perhaps go sponsor it. Thank you.
Thank you. And at the risk of sounding like a stuck record, I reiterate, great though it is, and I'm sure there are many people willing to do it, it will have no impact. Those results cannot be taken into account by the environment. It's only the Environment Agency's results that determine what bathing water quality reading is. Great for raising awareness and great for assurance if you're about to go for a swim. Thank you all so very much for attending. Thank you for the patience while we grope our way through to the end. Hope you found it useful. The recommendations will be published. We will be following up, and I think we'll see most of you again quite soon. Thank you all very much indeed.